Chapter 40. Making money seems to be really easy. Chapter 40. Making money seems to be really easy. When Yimo was dragging the two bodies into the forest, he searched them but didn't find anything good, only around $1,000 cash on the bodies. As for their card, Yimo didn't want it at all. However, that knife seemed passable and looked very sharp, so Yimo took it as a trophy. With a few fireball techniques, he burned these two into a black ball of crisp but couldn't burn them completely into nothingness. Yimo sighed. His fireball technique was too low caliber. If he were at the third stage, one fireball would have been enough to make them completely disappear. With a casual movement of his palm, he made a big pit and kicked the two bodies inside. Then, he used another palm to push some dirt in. He had never buried the people that he had killed, however, this time he received a few $1,000s to do it, so he might as well act like a hired laborer. After Yimo had taken care of these two robbers, he didn't go back and instead went straight to the mountains. "You, wait up." The woman waited a while at the road, but since she still didn't see Yimo come back, she immediately ran into the forest and found that Yimo actually went farther in. She was barely able to see his back, and if she had been a little slower, Yimo would have probably been nowhere to be seen already. Yimo heard the woman's yell and stopped. Seeing him stop, the woman was really shocked. In her eyes, Yimo left because he was scared of her. Therefore, when he heard her voice, he should have run as fast as possible. However, he actually stopped. She wanted to believe Yimo stopped because he was scared of her, but she knew that Yimo wasn't. He didn't seem scared in the slightest. "You're not afraid of me?" The woman walked up to Yimo and asked. Yimo pulled the bag on his shoulders and smiled plainly. "Are you going to kill me?" "No, you didn't offend me. I don't like killing people." The woman subconsciously shook her head. "Oh, since you won't kill me, why should I be scared?" Yimo asked as if things seemed weird for him. The woman looked at Yimo again. He was an ordinary youth that was decent looking, and looked clean and white. He wore tidy clothes and even looked like a student. He was probably only a little over 20 and didn't give her any signal of danger. She had escaped from death countless times, which left her with an unerring, natural instinct about people's strengths close to her own, and obviously, Yimo wasn't. "You are very bold, but if you're not scared of me, why are you running into the mountain? This mountain is your home. Can't I go inside?" This woman fumbled for words. Although Yimo's words were a bit aggressive, she didn't get angry. Instead, she smiled. "Okay, you're right. Let's get to know each other. I'm Wendong, Wen for hearing, Dong for winter. Yimo." Yimo simply said his name. He didn't know what this woman he didn't know wanted with him. "Do you know why I called to you and wanted to get to know you?" Wendong asked. However, she didn't wait for Yimo to answer and just said herself, "It's because I approve of you. You also saw just then, I'm not an ordinary person. If you want, I can introduce a master to you." Yimo waved his hand and said, "No need to introduce a master. If you don't have anything else, I'm going." "Don't be in such a hurry, looks like you don't know how strong the most powerful people in this world can get. In that case, we'll talk about finding a master for you later. I have a business to do right now. Are you interested in going with me?" Of course, the remuneration is much more than burying two trashes. The woman didn't mind Yimo rejecting her goodwill and continued to talk slowly. Remuneration? Yimo thought that helping this woman to take care of two trashes earned him a few $1,000s and, since he needed money right now, if this woman could give him even more, then it wouldn't matter too much if he helped her out a bit more. Besides, he was already at the second stage of Kai gathering now, so he wasn't scared that this woman would try something to him. The most important thing for him was that, when he started to cultivate again, he wouldn't have the time to earn money. "Tell me, what is it about, and how much payment?" Yimo cared about how much he was paid the most. With enough money, he wouldn't have to worry about a lot of money-related things. Wendong didn't answer directly and instead said, "If you walk north from here, in approximately 10 kilometers, there's a road that goes straight to a tourist spot in the Xiangshan Valley. In a small hotel at the tourist spot, I have 2 cases there, then you just need to help me carry them and come with me to fulfill the business deal. Relax, with me here, you'll be very safe. At that time, you just need to give the cases and don't need to say anything. As for payment, I'll give you $50,000, how about it? $50K for just carrying a case?" This money was too easy to earn. Yimo wanted to go since he only earned a little more than 10,000 after arduously selling charms and treating diseases under those special opportunities. As for Wendong tricking him, he wasn't afraid of it at all, as he didn't believe that there was someone capable of killing him, and, even if they were stronger than him, no one could stop him if he wanted to go. Fine, I'll do it, but we can't go too far. I still need to go somewhere else. Yimo nodded and agreed without a second thought. Wendong nodded, seeing Yimo's confidence. She said, "Not bad, you're a quick decision maker, someone who can do big things. I like this. The place I am going for the deal is only a few hours by road. Perhaps, after the deal is done, there wouldn't be anything that would bother you for a minute." Seeing that Yimo didn't talk anymore, Wendong also didn't talk and started to lead the way. Although it was the mountain ranges here, Wendong was strangely light-stepped and didn't seem to struggle at all. She was afraid that Yimo couldn't keep up and intentionally traveled slowly. However, she discovered that Yimo's stamina was really good, and he didn't have any signs of having trouble to keep up with her, which surprised her. If it wasn't that Yimo didn't look like someone who practiced martial arts and for his elegant long white hands, Wendong would probably have suspected Yimo to be in the same field as her. Wendong's predictions were correct. After they had walked in the mountain for only around an hour or so, they saw another mountain road in front of them. This road was obviously more popular than the road where they got off, at least they could see a car coming every so often. Wendong and Yimo didn't wait long before stopping a bus heading towards Xiangshan Valley. Xiangshan Valley was China's famous tourist spot. Its fame was equal with the 5 Mountains. However, due to tourists going missing each year, and the high rate of accidents on the mountain roads, its popularity was far lesser than the 5 Great Mountains and some other famous mountains. As soon as Yimo arrived at the Xiangshan Valley, he immediately felt that the spirit Kai here was much greater than in Ninghai. If this place weren't too close to Ninghai, he even would have wanted to stay here and cultivate. The bus stopped at a parking place halfway up the mountain. Wendong told him to wait here while she got the stuff, and Yimo didn't wait long before Wendong drove a car over. "I have the thing, get in the car, let's go." Wendong stopped the car in front of Yimo and said casually. Although Yimo's spirit sense could only reach out to 5 or 6 meters, it was enough to check this car. He scanned with his spirit sense and didn't find anything wrong with it, except for 2 extra cases on the back seat. Yimo opened the door and sat in the back seat while his spirit sense scanned the box. One of them had an assault rifle. Yimo didn't have a good understanding of guns and didn't know what model gun this was, but it looked a bit like the AK series. The other box had a stack of information and a very strange model. Wendong was very happy with Yimo sitting at the back without question. However, she was also wondering if Yimo's attitude was because he was usually this bold or if he had simply not seen enough of the world. If it was that he hadn't experienced enough, then what would happen if he made some embarrassing moves? Thinking about this, Wendong said, "Yimo, later when we go in, if there are people staring at us on the side, you don't need to worry. You just need to listen to my instructions and give them the case." "I know." Yimo thought that they were probably exchanging the box with that model and a stack of information. Since Wendong was so calm, it meant that there was no danger. Besides, even if there were, he, Yimo, wouldn't be scared, and after this deal, he could cultivate feeling relieved. Chapter 41. I should believe him. Chapter 41. I should believe him. Ninghai. 2 days passed really quickly. Although Ning Qingxue stood at the front door every day gazing her eyes out, not even a shadow came, much less Yimo. 2 days later, Ning Qingxue finally understood that Yimo was gone and left without a sound. He didn't even tell her or take his own things away. If it wasn't an urgent issue, then she really wasn't anything in his eyes. Perhaps in Yimo's eyes, she was just a disrespectful, heartless, and self-centered person. "Qingxue, 2 days' time is up. Your parents have already told me that they were coming, but I told them that we will be meeting them at U State." Li Mumei looked at the soulless Ning Qingxue and reminded once again. Ning Qingxue's behavior these 2 days were very abnormal, as though she had lost her soul. She seemed to really care if Yimo came back or not. Even though Li Mumei didn't know what happened exactly, she knew there was something going on between Ning Qingxue and Yimo that she didn't know. But if someone were to say Ning Qingxue was attracted to Yi Mo, she would never believe it. Has it been 2 days already? Ning Qingxue answered subconsciously as her mind wandered in thought. Half a moment later, Ning Qingxue said once again, Mumei, I want to buy this place. Yes, buy this place, no matter how much it costs. Qingxue, what's wrong with you? Li Mumei felt that Ning Qingxue's actions were too casual. Even if the owner sold this place, who would live here? Mumei, buy this place, and tell the owner not to move the flower pots. Ning Qingxue had made up her mind. Why? Qingxue, even if you want to buy this place, you must have a good reason. Besides, your parents would want to know too, Li Mumei asked in confusion. No reason, Mumei, I just feel that I have lost something here. Perhaps I have a chance to find it if I buy this place, yet if I don't, I might never have the chance to find it in my entire life. Mumei, I have made up my mind. If my dad doesn't agree, I will talk to him myself. Ning Qingxue's voice was very soft, as if coming from the border of heaven. Look, that pretty lady who came for Yi Mo last time came again. Yi Mo's a really lucky guy. He actually knows beautiful women of this caliber and yet doesn't come to class, making the girls unable to find him. Amazing, I've only seen him 2 or 3 times ever since school begun. HMPH. There were discussions everywhere inside the classroom, and that last HMPH was made by Yang Yang, who felt annoyed by this beautiful girl who was countless times prettier than her. Furthermore, she had even embarrassed herself last time. Su Jingwen had been to Ninghai University many times but just couldn't find Yi Mo. She was aware that Li Mumei knew where Yi Mo lived, but she didn't want for the fact that she was looking for Yi Mo to be known. As for her mindset, Su Jingwen understood it. She was looking for Yi Mo because she felt very comfortable and had a joyful mood every time she was with him. Moreover, she didn't feel any pressure in his presence at all. Ever since Yi Mo danced with her that night on her birthday, Su Jingwen had never been able to find him. Today was already the 3rd time Su Jingwen came looking for him, so this time, she decided to ask his classmates if she didn't find him. Just when Su Jingwen made up her mind, she saw a cold-looking young, yet mature woman coming in, and Su Jingwen immediately recognized who this woman was. She was the teacher she saw last time when she left with Yi Mo. Immediately, she walked up excitedly and asked, Teacher, hello, do you know where Yi Mo had been these few days? Yi Mo? I don't know someone so shameless. The woman turned and left after having said that sentence. This woman was, of course, Yun Bing, and right now, the person she hated the most was Yi Mo. If Yi Mo appeared in front of her again, she wasn't even sure if she wouldn't immediately throw the books in her hand at him. Today, there was actually someone asking where Yi Mo went, and she recognized this pretty lady from last time. There was something she was absolutely sure about. Someone who was friends with Yi Mo definitely wouldn't be a good person. Su Jingwen stared at the teacher strutting off in shock and thought, did all the teachers in the university have such low moral standards? She said that she didn't know him, yet she also called him a shameless person. What would Yi Mo do to that woman for her to react like that? Even if other people didn't know Yi Mo's situation, how could she not know? He was the person kicked out of the Beijing Yi family and was naturally that. What else could it be for a woman to hate a man for? Yi Mo couldn't do that at all. What right did this woman have to hate Yi Mo? Immediately, Yun Bing's image in Su Jingwen's heart fell by a mile. Sister Jingwen, why are you here? Su Mai's voice sounded. Oh, Su Mai. Who is that teacher in front? Why are her moral standards so low? I asked her a question, and yet she actually swore. Su Jingwen pointed at Yun Bing, who only had their back to them. Su Mai looked and said intrigued, she's the English teacher, Yun Bing, although she is a bit cold, she isn't someone with low moral standards. What's wrong? Did she say something just then? No, when I asked why Yi Mo wasn't here and where he went, she actually called him a shameless person. Really, what sort of teacher is she? Su Jingwen was obviously not happy about Yun Bing addressing Yi Mo like that. Yi Mo? Oh, no wonder. It's because Yi Mo harassed her before, I saw it with my own eyes. That day, Yi Mo probably harassed the teacher because of something, so Ms. Yun was going to hit him but Yi Mo grabbed her by the wrist. Eventually, Ms. Yun called him a shameless person. Sister Jingwen, don't do anything with that Yi Mo anymore, He's a shameless person and probably got to know you for your money. Su Mai didn't have any good impressions of Yi Mo and fabricated more negative things about Yi Mo, making him seem completely worthless. Su Jingwen listened to Su Mai's words confused, and after a long while, she frowned her eyebrows and said, Yi Mo isn't such a person. I believe my first impressions, and I've seen him quite a few times. He didn't seem like that kind of person at all. Su Mai, didn't you see it wrong? I think you shouldn't be so judgmental sometimes. What? Sister Jingwen, how could I see it wrongly? That day, in the forest by the lake, I saw with my own eyes the interaction between them. And, even if I did see wrongly, was the teacher swearing at Yi Mo also false then? Su Mai hurriedly said. Actually, when Su Jingwen asked, she knew her question was problematic. If Su Mai saw it wrongly, why did that woman swore at Yi Mo without reason? Were her feelings really wrong? However, Yi Mo didn't give her a bad impression. Although he wasn't well off, he always had an equal attitude towards her. What was going on here? You know someone's face, but you don't know their heart. Was Yi Mo really that type of person? Could it be possible that he simply hid very deeply? Or was it that he had hidden intentions when he made contact with her? Yet in the grace of heavens, it had been her looking for Yi Mo right at the start. He never came looking for her once. It was the same even when he knew her number. She touched the bracelet on her wrist. Su Jingwen's heart was a bit messy. It wasn't because she had feelings for Yi Mo, it was that she never had a friend of the opposite sex in the same age group who she could get along well with. Her good impression for Yi Mo appeared without her realizing. However, now she discovered that other people's opinions of him were so different to hers that she felt her heart was blocked. Besides, she saw some things with her own eyes. No, she thought, I need to go where he lives and see for myself. Li Mumei knows, so I'll go ask her first. I don't believe Yi Mo is such a person, and they must have misunderstood him. I should believe him. Chapter 42, 3 Beads. Chapter 42, 3 Beads. Before Su Jingwen could ask Li Mumei, another woman called her. This woman was none other than Ning Qingxue, who married Yi Mo. Of course, Su Jingwen knew why Ning Qingxue was married to Yi Mo, however, her woman's intuition told her that Ning Qingxue didn't feel that great toward her, so why would Ning Qingxue be the first to call her? When Su Jingwen arrived at a cafeteria, Ning Qingxue was already there and had been for a long time. As she saw Su Jingwen coming in, Ning Qingxue hurriedly stood up. Qingxue, you were looking for me? Su Jingwen saw Ning Qingxue and asked. Yes, Jingwen, please sit, do you want to drink anything? Ning Qingxue asked casually. I don't like coffee, I'll have some juice instead. Just when Su Jingwen finished her sentence, she realized that there was also a cup of juice in front of Ning Qingxue. The two were drinking juice in a cafeteria. This really was quite ridiculous. Qingxue, are you guys living all right? Su Jingwen originally wanted to ask how Yi Mo was doing, but when the words got to her mouth, it became you guys. Oh, good. Ning Qingxue drank a sip of juice and didn't know how to reply. After a while, she calmed down and said, Jingwen, there's actually something that I want you to help me with. It's just that, after a long while, Ning Qingxue still hadn't been able to articulate her intentions. It was as though it was embarrassing to say. Qingxue, if there's something, just be straightforward. Mumei is my good friend, while she is your cousin and, although we weren't familiar before, I think we'll be familiar later on. Su Jingwen's meaning was clear. We aren't strangers anymore, what can't you say? Okay, I'll be straightforward then. Could you tell me some things about Yi Mo? And, Ning Qingxue said half her sentence but wasn't able to say the other half. Su Jingwen suddenly smiled sweetly and said, oh, so this was actually something like that. I got to know Yi Mo in a very accidental way. He was taken to the police station, and I went there to get him out. The reason I did it was because, from a distance, he looked like someone familiar. Yet, when I saw him in person, I realized that he wasn't the one I was looking for. Afterward, we ate together and later, I invited him to my birthday dinner. Su Jingwen didn't say that she had thought that Yi Mo was that master who sold her the charms. After all, Ning Qingxue and Li Mumei appeared not to be superstitious. Why would she bother saying that? Ning Qingxue didn't think that Yi Mo actually went to the police station. She didn't know for what reason, but she didn't ask and continued, Jingwen, last time when Yimo went to your birthday party, he gave you a bracelet. If you didn't like it, I thought that maybe, Ning Qingxue was too embarrassed to say that she wanted Su Jingwen to give her the bracelet. After all, Yimo gave this to Su Jingwen, and if she hadn't heard from Li Mumei that Yimo had only seen Su Jingwen a few times, she would ask Su Jingwen for it no matter how much she wanted it. And now, Su Jingwen also admitted that she and Yimo weren't really close. Thus, Ning Qingxue tried to ask, but when the words reached her mouth, she still couldn't say it. Although Ning Qingxue didn't say it out loud, Su Jingwen understood what she meant. Ning Qingxue probably wanted her bracelet. Su Jingwen began to wonder, does she really have feelings for Yimo? No, even if there were feelings, if Yimo could give this to me, then, of course, he could make one for Ning Qingxue. So why does she still want this bracelet? She honestly thought that Yimo's bracelet was really crude looking, yet the reason she liked it was because she felt that the friendship she had with Yimo was pure. Yimo was a friend that made her feel very peaceful and, although they hadn't seen each other much, it never had anything else involved. However, earlier when she heard Su Mai and saw Yun Bing's attitude towards Yimo, she started to feel confused. At this point, she wasn't sure what sort of a person Yimo was. Although she believed in Yimo, there was still some doubt in the depth of her heart. Is Yimo okay? Su Jingwen didn't reply to Ning Qingxue and instead asked something completely irrelevant. Ning Qingxue originally thought that Su Jingwen was going to say that she would go back and look for the bracelet, or say that she didn't know where she put it since Ning Qingxue didn't believe that Su Jingwen would wear the crude bracelet Yimo gave her. In her eyes, that bracelet shouldn't mean much to Su Jingwen, therefore, she asked for it. However, she didn't expect Su Jingwen to ask about Yimo, which took her by surprise. Yimo left and probably even left Ning Hai by now. I don't know where he went, and I haven't seen him for a few days. Tonight, I will also leave Ning Hai for you state with Mumei. Ning Qingxue still reacted quickly and told Su Jingwen that she was leaving Ning Hai soon. Yimo had already left. He still hasn't graduated from Ning Hai University, though, Su Jingwen said in surprise. But soon, she remembered what Su Mai told her about Yimo at Ning Hai University, that even if he finished all the course, he still probably couldn't graduate. Su Jingwen suddenly smiled and didn't wait for Ning Qingxue's reply. Instead, she just said, that bracelet is actually not bad, I quite like it. Since you are already his wife, wouldn't he agree to make you one if you ask him for it? Tell me why you want that bracelet, and perhaps I could give you half. Ning Qingxue immediately realized that Su Jingwen was intentionally doing this, but she still replied, you know that I married Yimo as a cover-up, it's just that now, I don't need it anymore. Yimo left and didn't leave anything to me. And, I feel I owe him, so, one reason that Ning Qingxue wanted the bracelet was that she was suddenly envious of Su Jingwen's bracelet that Yimo gave her. Since Su Jingwen was so rich, she probably wouldn't like something so crude and probably even lost it somewhere. Since Su Jingwen didn't like it, then it shouldn't even matter if she took it back. However, she hid a key thing. Although Yimo didn't leave anything to her, he was gone too quickly and even left behind his little medical case. However, she wasn't going to say this as that medical case had already become something private to her. The bracelet is on my hands. Su Jingwen took off the bracelet as she spoke. The reason she thought Ning Qingxue felt guilty towards Yimo was because she used him. In fact, Ning Qingxue was also pitiful, as it seemed that Yimo was infuriated with her since he left without even notifying her. Ning Qingxue was shocked. She didn't think that Su Jingwen would actually wear on her wrist the bracelet Yimo gave her. This took her by surprise. What did this mean? It implied that Su Jingwen really liked this bracelet and things weren't as she thought they were. Suddenly, an unknown feeling gushed in Ning Qingxue's heart. A feeling that she didn't even understand. All right, I'll give you 3 beads. These were all made by Yimo himself. You can link them with string yourself. As Su Jingwen spoke, she opened the bracelet and took off 3 beads and gave them to Ning Qingxue. If it would have happened in the morning before she had heard Yun Bing swearing at Yimo and Su Mai's words to her, perhaps she wouldn't be willing to give 3 beads to Ning Qingxue. But after these 2 events, she had a feeling that the beads in her hands didn't seem as important as before. Now that Ning Qingxue asked for it, she actually gave 3 to her. As for why keeping the other 3, perhaps it was in memory of that pure friendship. After she got back, maybe she would store the 3 remaining beads away and not wear it on her hands anymore. Chapter 43. This money isn't easy to earn. Chapter 43. This money isn't easy to earn. When Dong's car sped on the roads around the mountain. If one looked outside, one would probably be fearful of the car falling off the cliff at any time. However, when Dong drove the car fast and steady. Despite so, many cars on the road saw Wen Dong, and all stopped by the road, fearful that this mad woman was going to crash into them. Wen Dong was speechless. Even if Yi Mo wasn't scared of being in a car going so fast without barricades to protect the car from falling off the road, he should at least open his eyes. However, he actually was quietly sleeping. Were his nerves just thick, or did he trust her driving skills? Wait, did he even know her car skills were so good? In fact, even her heart was pumping, driving so fast on this mountain road. Wen Dong thought of the moment when she first saw Yi Mo and his fearless nerves. Wen Dong finally got to understand Yi Mo a bit. Using nice words, he could be described as a completely fearless young man, but in a meaner tone, he was a fool. However, this type of people was perfectly suited to her, since she needed exactly this type of people to help her. Otherwise, it would be really hard for her to do the deal by herself. Seeing that Yi Mo didn't take notice of the car's speed, Wen Dong finally slowed down. After all, they were driving on the mountainside, and it was quite dangerous going this fast as there were a lot of twists and turns. She would raise the speed again after they got off the mountain. But at this moment, Yi Mo opened his eyes and asked casually, "How far is it?" Wen Dong heard Yi Mo's words and immediately replied, "Around 600 kilometers. Still that far. How long is it going to take with you driving so slowly?" Yi Mo frowned and said. Hearing Yi Mo's words, Wen Dong almost drove the car off the cliff. She thought that she was going fast enough already, but this still wasn't fast enough for him. No wonder this guy didn't talk, he thought she was driving too slow. "We are still on the mountains road, we'll drive faster once we reach the highway," Wen Dong replied helplessly. Luckily, Yi Mo didn't continue to talk about her driving speed and closed his eyes to meditate. If Yi Mo's tone just then really sounded unhappy, she would have thought he was messing with her. After the car got on the highway, Wen Dong finally raised the speed. Yi Mo felt that the car was a bit floaty, so he looked at the car's speed meter and saw that it had just reached 200 km per hour. At this speed, it only took them less than 2 hours to reach Yundu. However, the car didn't enter the city and instead parked outside a mansion in the rural district. Yi Mo scanned this mansion. It looked very grandiloquent, with a cluster of bamboo outside the mansion as well as a huge artificial lake. The yard of the mansion was also very spacious as 7 to 8 luxury cars were parked there, and the grass patch at the front was enough to be made into 2 soccer fields. It could be seen that the owner of this mansion was definitely wealthy. "You carry that smaller case, and I'll take the bigger one." After saying that, Wen Dong got off the car and grabbed the big case from the back. Yi Mo knew that inside this big case was an AK rifle, while the smaller one contained some information and a model. Yi Mo looked at Wen Dong thoughtfully. Being able to own such a huge yard and a mansion on the outskirts of the city meant that this person had not only money but also connections. Otherwise, such occurrence rarely happened. Thinking about this, Yi Mo took out his beak-shaped hat and shades from his bag and put them on. Then, he grabbed a mouth mask before finally carrying the case Wen Dong told him to carry. Wen Dong looked at Yi Mo's appearance, and her mouth moved but finally didn't say anything. She didn't understand why Yi Mo would do something like this. In her opinion, Yi Mo had thick nerves and wasn't the type to think about being hunted because of revenge. However, Yi Mo did this, and she didn't know what he was thinking, so she remained silent. Yi Mo's appearance did look really cool, and it gave people an indescribable feeling. "This isn't bad," Wen Dong muttered and carried the case into the mansion. However, she didn't drive her car in. The 2 guards at the door scanned Yi Mo, but when the 2 guards saw Wen Dong coming in, they didn't even stop or question her, much less search her, and just let them in. Yi Mo's spirit sense range was too short right now, and he could only see 5 to 6 meters from his position. Even that was a bit blurry. Thus, he couldn't check this entire mansion. Haha, Mrs. Wen is still looking strong and good after leaving the northern sands. I've been waiting for a long time. Give Mrs. Wen a seat and serve her tea. When Yi Mo and Wen Dong went into the living room, a slightly old-sounding voice appeared. Tea won't be necessary. I want to finish the deal immediately and leave when I'm done. We won't have anything to do with each other after that. Wen Dong waved her hand and said straightforwardly. Yi Mo looked at the person speaking. It was a 50-or-so-year-old man. His hair was a bit white, but his spirit was ferocious and had this bleak killer's eye on him. Although he had a smile on his face, his eyes were very sharp and flickering. This wasn't a simple man and appeared to be a very suspicious person. However, for Yi Mo, this man should be at most around Wen Dong's level, or even lower than her, and didn't think of him as a threat. No matter how suspicious he was, it was ethereal and insignificant, like clouds in front of absolute power. There were two men on either side of this person. Unexpectedly, there weren't the people guarding the door that Wen Dong and Yi Mo came from. Yi Mo saw this guy's bleak appearance and knew he wasn't someone easy to talk to. There weren't people at the door, and this didn't match the man's temperament. Yi Mo scanned with his spirit sense out and immediately found another 4 people. There were 2 at the door, with 1 squatting on each side, and all had guns in their hands. It was just that the 2 people cleverly used the ping phone, 1, to cover it. The 2 people at the door hid outside after he and Wen Dong came in. It was not surprising that Wen Dong didn't notice the people behind the ping phone because it had a lot of holes in the middle which made it see-through, and on top of that, it was hollow at the bottom, so it didn't look conspicuous. The only reason Yi Mo could see them was because he could scan it using his spirit sense. Although this ping phone looked something like a painting and was hollow in the middle, the side near the interior of the mansion was 3-dimensional. However, because of their careful placement, the people who walked in from the door would only notice an ordinary ping phone. If Yi Mo didn't have spirit sense, he wouldn't be able to see it either. However, even if Yi Mo didn't know that the interior side was hollow, he could still see some problems. Wen Dong probably didn't see it because the side of the ping phone near the door was nailed into the ground. Who would nail a ping phone to the ground in the living room? This obviously wasn't normal. The part of the ping phone that was empty had a person squatting inside it. This person's clothes were all the same color as the ping phone and also had quite some holes in it. However, it was cleverly made so that the person who entered the door could only see a small half. Usually, someone who saw such an ordinary ping phone and could still see clearly the other side wouldn't pay much attention to it. It seemed that Wen Dong's deal wasn't going to be as simple as he had thought. It appeared that this $50,000 wouldn't be easy to earn. Notes: 1. Ping phone, a type of screen that is used for decoration in the Chinese culture. You can search the Chinese characters on Google Image if you want to see what it looks like. Chapter 44, Lethal Trap. Chapter 44, Lethal Trap. Haha, don't be hasty. Mrs. Wen, let's talk about business first. I don't think you would have a problem with that. The man talked slowly once again. All right. After Wen Dong said these 2 words, her face changed and said to Yi Mo, open the case and let him see. Yi Mo saw Wen Dong's face change and immediately knew that she had discovered the people hiding at the side. Although he didn't know how she found out, but since she did, it meant that she had a plan. However, he didn't know if she noticed the people hiding behind the door or the people hiding in the ping phone. Mrs. Wen, I know you're strong, but no matter how strong you are, you will need more than 10 seconds to open the case and set up the gun inside. During these 10 seconds, I can kill you many times. Therefore, I hope we don't get impulsive. The man sat down and looked at Wen Dong in derision. Yi Mo was also surprised. He didn't know where Wen Dong got her courage from to deal with this man. It was akin to a sheep going into a tiger's mouth. What does that mean? What's the meaning of you having people with guns standing behind the door? Do you want to break the rules? Wen Dong asked smoothly, as though she was saying something completely irrelevant to her. Clap, clap. The man clapped his hand and said, Mrs. Wen, you truly are as strong as you were before. But now, the rules don't mean much. Come in. Hearing the man's voice, the 2 people at the door came in and held up their gun to Yi Mo and Wen Dong. However, Yi Mo didn't expect that the 4 people behind the man wouldn't raise their guns. Yimo now realized that Wendong only discovered the two people at the door and didn't see the two people hidden at the ping phones on the each side. Yimo's spirit sense locked onto the fingers of the two men at the door. As soon as they would pull the trigger, he would try to dodge it. He wasn't too sure if he could dodge bullets now, and before the third stage, Yimo estimated it to be quite dangerous. Wendong acted as though she wasn't pointed at by a gun. Instead, she took out a timer from her pocket and said slowly, "If you really want to break the rules, then I don't mind all of us leaving together. Indeed, I have a gun in this case, but there is also a timed bomb. Although it isn't very powerful, but it is potent enough to flatten your mansion and more. I think you won't doubt the power of the bomb in my hands. Haha, Mrs. Wen, you really like to joke. Jiang Yang, give the thing over to Mrs. Wen for inspection. And you guys, put back your guns. Don't you know that Mrs. Wen is a guest?" the man said while making the men at the door put back their guns. He obviously knew what Wendong would do, since playing with bombs was as easy as playing with firecrackers to them. Wendong acted as though this thing didn't happen and just opened the case. When everyone had their eyes on the case, she had already set up the gun in a flurry of movements. Although it wasn't timed, Yimo was sure she didn't go over 10 seconds. Although it was just a few seconds, either out of concern for the bomb on her or because he didn't see the thing Wendong brought, the man's face changed a few times, but in the end, he didn't instructed his men to open fire. However, Yimo knew that Wendong's case definitely didn't have a bomb because he scanned it with his spirit sense before. Wendong had already set up the rifle and pulled Yimo to the side. Yimo laughed bitterly to himself. Even though she avoided leaving their backs to the people at the door, this just left their backs to the people hiding in the ping foam. Of course, the man had a smile on the corner of his mouth and nodded to the man beside him with the case. The man opened the case and walked over to Wendong. Yimo had seen it clearly. It was a case full of US dollars, around 1 million. He cursed Wendong for being stingy. She got herself more than 1 million, yet she just gave him tens of thousands for payment and still made him subject to gunpoint. However, Yimo also opened the case and pointed the case at the man. At the same time, he picked off some wooden splinters from the wooden chair by his side and split into 8 pieces. He shot one of them to the back as the wooden splinter passed through the hole in the ping foam accurately into the man hiding on the other side. The man's position didn't even change before he was killed. No one saw his movement. The wooden splinter was imbued with Kai, and when it struck the man, it just pierced his forehead and blocked his sound cord. For those who wanted his life, Yimo was always merciless. After killing this man, Yimo intentionally walked towards the middle. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to see them clearly with his spirit sense due to the range. Seeing Yimo walk towards the middle, even though Wendong didn't want to, she could only follow behind Yimo. The man with the US dollars walked up to Yimo's case and checked it, while Wendong also had the gun on one hand and took a few stacks of US dollars to make sure. After seeing the contents of the case, the man nodded. The boss smiled and said, "Okay, just like this." After a few words, he actually turned and walked away. Yimo's spirit sense immediately scanned that the other man inside the ping phone was going to pull the trigger, and at the same time, the rest of the 7 splinters in Yimo's hands had already flew out as he pulled Wendong aside a few meters. Yimo didn't understand why these guys weren't afraid of bombs, but it was possible that when Wendong opened the case, he used some instruments to see through it. This Wendong was careless. Just when this man said okay, Wendong immediately noticed something was wrong and was going to raise her gun and shoot. But at this moment, she was pulled away by Yimo. Wendong, who didn't understand why Yimo pulled her away at this dangerous moment, immediately reacted after she heard a few clear gunshots. She didn't even think and raised her gun to retaliate. However, she realized that other than the boss, no one else could stand. What was this? Seeing that the 2 men at the door as well as the 4 behind the boss were all bleeding from their forehead, Wendong immediately understood what had happened. These people were killed by Yimo. Wendong's first thought was that Yimo definitely wasn't a normal person. He actually managed to make her dodge the gunshot while killing at least 7 people in such a short time. If Yimo didn't pull her aside, she was sure she could only kill 6 of them before she was shot. However, she definitely wouldn't have been able to dodge the bullet from the ping foam. God, who is he, and how is he this strong? Wendong immediately found the blood stain on the ping phone in astonishment. Just then, the gunshot also sounded from there. Wendong immediately realized that there was someone inside, and this person was killed by Yimo. Thinking that there was another ping phone on the other side, Wendong also looked over. As expected, there was also blood dripping down from there. Immediately, Wendong had cold sweat run down her back. If it wasn't Yimo, she wouldn't even have known how she died. There were two hidden people pointing their guns at her and she didn't even notice. No wonder she felt her heart was a bit cold when she came in here. So this was the reason. So what if she could drag a few people to death with her? There was the sound of footsteps which had been already heard by Yimo as he was prepared to kill with more wooden splinters, but Wendong had already raised her gun and ended the battle in 2 shots. Yimo nodded to himself. Wendong definitely couldn't hear the footsteps like him, but she could notice someone approaching, which meant that she was experienced. The boss looked at Wendong in disbelief, and his face became paler. He knew that Wendong was arrogant, so he set up this lethal trap. However, he lost all his men instead. If only he had known that her bomb was fake earlier, he could have killed her before. Gong Huishan, you wouldn't want to kill me for a mere million, would you? You want to keep the information to yourself. Wendong's face immediately became bad and raised her gun, forcing it towards the man. Chapter 45. Who's going to piss off? Chapter 45. Who's going to piss off? Is there any use in trying to kill me? Don't you know that the whole world would immediately know about this, idiot? Wendong sneered at this man. Ca, calm down. Wendong, I was not the one who wanted to kill you, it was, however, he didn't even have the time to say who it was before she had already opened fire. I don't need to know. Wendong's face returned to normal as she coldly killed the man with a single shot. Meanwhile, Yimo was wondering if Wendong would ask him where he came from, but even if she did, Yimo wouldn't tell her anything. He just came here for the $50,000 she promised. However, he wouldn't have thought that earning this little money would be so hard. If he hadn't been careful, he actually might have died here. After a while, although he didn't expect Wendong to ask anything anymore, instead, she simply said to Yimo, let's leave. The 2 I just killed were probably the door guard, so now, there might not be anyone left. I will set off a bomb to blow this place up. Hearing her words, Yimo wondered where that bomb was. But before he even had the chance to ask, Wendong had already taken off a series of bombs from her waist, which shocked Yimo. She really did bring bombs, however, it was hung around her waist, so this meant that her timed bomb threat previously was real. This woman really is a maniac. If she had set off the bomb earlier, wouldn't I be? Although Yimo didn't like it, he didn't say much. He had experienced quite a lot of dangerous situations and didn't care about another one. 20 minutes after the car had started to drive away, the heavenly shocking explosion could be heard from afar. If you're planning to go to Guiling, why don't you go there by plane? Wendong sat silently for a long time before asking. She already knew that Yimo wasn't an ordinary person, which explained why he was so calm since the beginning despite everything that happened. Now that Yimo wasn't saying anything, she knew that Yimo wasn't feeling happy. Plus, if it wasn't for Yimo today, she would have died along with those people. There was no way she could have survived in that situation. She wasn't afraid of death, but if she died, she wouldn't be able to use the money the way she wanted. Although she didn't say it, she was still very grateful toward Yimo. I don't have my identity papers on me. Yimo's reply was simple, yet he wouldn't actually dare to use his identity papers even if he had them. He had killed Song Shoan and also disappeared that night. The Song family would find out that he was the culprit eventually. Yimo knew this a long time ago. If he bought a plane ticket with his identity, this would be like directly sending clues to the Song family, and right now, he didn't have the ability to speak on equal grounds with them. After Wang Peng's hand had recovered, he was on high alert. It made him realize that he wasn't the only strong one in this world. After staying silent for another while, Wendong said, "Thank you for what happened this time. Without you, I probably would have lost my life there. The $50,000 I promised you is too little, but I cannot give you this money either. It has other uses. You can take the case containing the model. That thing is worth a lot of money. With your power, you should be able to protect it, but don't ask me what it is, I don't know much either. However, if you trust me, There are only 3 hours until we reach Huyang, which is a far-off mountain district, and I can help you get a real identity there. Yimo really wasn't interested in that model thing and didn't care at all whether he had it or not. However, with a new identity, it would be so much easier for him. Now, that Wendong could actually get him one, of course, he would be happy to. He quickly said, "Fine, I'll believe you, I really need a new identity anyway." As for payment, Yimo was satisfied with the 50,000. He didn't really care that much about money as long as he had enough to use. Even if Wendong were to give him those US dollars, he would actually find it troublesome to exchange them. Wendong immediately had a good impression of Yimo. This guy not only had absurd power but was easy to talk to and didn't take money into much consideration. With his power, it was as easy as eating and drinking for him to kill her and rob everything from her, but from the beginning till now, Yimo didn't even look at the case once. He even didn't complain about only being paid 50,000 while risking so much. Furthermore, Yimo didn't even ask who she really was, or what she did, or even where she was going. It was as though he was simply a roadside stranger. Well, perhaps he was, but definitely not an ordinary one. "Do you have a phone number?" Wendong wanted to be connected with Yimo. "No, I like peace." Yimo's words made her realize that he didn't like getting to know other people, so Wendong didn't talk anymore. She wasn't the type of woman to annoy someone. 3 hours later, the car arrived at Huyang. Yimo went into a little hotel after Wendong had taken a picture of Yimo and left, and when Wendong came back the second day, it was already 3 p.m. She really wasn't bluffing. Yimo's new identity was already completed. He was also called Yimo, however, his place of residence was a rural place in Huyang, but Yimo didn't mind. There were too many people also called Yimo in this world. Wendong gave Yimo $50,000 as well as the case with the file and the model since she said she had no use for it anymore. When Yimo opened the case, he saw that this thing inside wasn't heavy, so he threw the case away and found a plastic bag to put its contents in. He stuffed it in his backpack and said goodbye to Wendong. That night, Yimo took the train to Huyang Province's southernmost city, Xianshan. Xianshan was the borderline city between the Huyang Province and the Xionghui Province. Meanwhile, Xionghui was also neighbors with the Guinan Province. Guilin, where Yimo wanted to go, belonged to the Guinan Province. Right now, he was at Xianshan, so he had to pass through Xionghui Province before he could go in Guinan. Finally, he would have to go to Guinan Province's southernmost city, which was Guilin City. After arriving in Xianshan, Yimo wasn't in a hurry to travel anymore. After all, this was a few thousand kilometers from Ninghai. Even if the Song family already knew that he killed Song Shoan, they wouldn't be able to find him here for quite some time. Besides, in Yimo's opinion, even if the Song family found their way to Ninghai from the roads the BMW traveled, they still needed some time to realize he had gone missing. After staying one night in Xianshan, Yimo went out to buy things the next day as he had decided to get a new set of clothing. In order to prevent him from being pointed at by a gun again, Yimo took the time to go to a shop and bought a packet or metal nails. The nails were minuscule, and each box had a few hundred of them. For others people, it might be absurd to use nails as projectiles, however, it was more than enough for Yimo. After buying the nails, Yimo casually walked around the market and realized that the clothes here were all expensive. It was all branded shops. For Yimo, his clothes only needed to be wearable and suited to his body. He didn't care about what brand it was. No matter how good the brand was, how could it get better than the clothes made in the cultivation realm? Plus, he didn't have that much money to spend on clothes. People would look down on people like Yimo who wore cheap clothes when they went into these branded shops. However, he didn't care. He was just about to leave a store when he noticed a poshly dressed man reaching his hand into a small bag under the armpit of a middle-aged man. Meanwhile, this middle-aged man was on the phone with a worried face and didn't notice that he was being robbed. Thief! The bag the man had under his armpit appeared to be made from real leather. How was the thief going to break into it? Yimo was looking curiously when another poshly dressed youth beside the thief walked up to Yimo and said in a low voice, "Kid, if you stare any longer, I'll gouge your eyes out. P***s off." Yimo's eyes became cold as he lifted his leg and delivered a kick, kicking this youth who told him to P***s off, right in the face. Chapter 46, Borderland Flowing Snake Town. Chapter 46, Borderland Flowing Snake Town. This youth kicked by Yi Mo flew backward and crashed onto a trash can. The way that he sat there would make people think he sat there himself, if not for his bleeding nose and mouth. Yi Mo's move immediately alerted everyone. Even that man who had just finished his call turned around. As soon as he turned around, he saw the thief behind him. However, when that thief saw that the middle-aged man noticed him, he didn't look worried at all. Instead, he packed away the sharp knife hidden between his fingers and turned, as two other men surrounded Yi Mo with him. Other than the youth kicked into the trash can, there were actually 4 of them. "Punk, you're asking to die. Go and disable him," another youth with a knife yelled in rage as he charged towards Yi Mo. The other 2 didn't hesitate to charge at Yi Mo as well. Only the one sitting on the trash can with his face still bleeding was completely terrorized. Of course, he had understood what had happened to him. A kick on his face from a young man actually sent him flying over and sitting on the trash can. He didn't even dare to think about this. It was as though he was forced to stand up as he realized that if Yi Mo had kicked him in the chest instead and made him fly, he would probably not be as terrified as he was right now. He recognized that this youth wasn't someone they could mess with and wanted to tell his mates to stop, but they had already charged up. The middle-aged man also seemed to understand that this young man probably saw the thieves trying to steal his wallet and was targeted by the thief's partners in crime instead. Although he wanted to help, he didn't know any martial arts, and just when he was about to call the police, a scene that he could not believe happened once again before his eyes. That young man kicked again and sent flying the man with the knife, who didn't even understand how his knife was pierced into his own leg. This wasn't all. The place where the man flew was right on the head of the man sitting in the trash can. Then, the youth jumped up and did a roundhouse kick, which sent the other 2 youth, including the one that tried to steal his wallet, flying. 2 cracks resounded. It wasn't immediately known what broke until 2 of the thieves yelled out in pain and crumpled on top of the trash can. The 4 formed a human pile which made the trash can crumbling onto the ground, making a loud banging sound. The middle-aged man gasped a breath of cold air. If he hadn't seen Yi Mo's movements with his own eyes and saw it on video instead, he would have thought this was synthesized by computer. This was almost like shooting a movie. Scum. Yi Mo left, and finally, the people watching finally came back to themselves. They looked at the 4 thieves laying on the ground and started clapping. These thieves were barely able to move, but they seemed to know that things would get troublesome if the police came, so they struggled to sit up. They didn't care about the blood on them as they held each other and walked out. "Friend, please wait up. Thank you for what happened just then." The middle-aged man chased Yi Mo and called out to him in gratitude. Yi Mo waved his hand and said, "It's nothing, I didn't help you just for your sake. Those scum picked a fight with me." After finishing his sentence, he was about to leave once again. "My name is Zhuo Aigua, and I would like to invite you to a dinner to compensate you. Are you willing to come, friend?" Seeing that Yi Mo was so powerful, Zhuo Aigua immediately had some thoughts. Not interested. Yi Mo was only staying in Xianshan City for 1 night. This man invited him to dinner for a reason, but what thing was more important than him going to Guilin and cultivate? Seeing that Yi Mo was going to leave, Zhuo Aigua was getting anxious. He hurriedly went up to him and said, "It's like this, I just need you to accompany me to Guilin, and furthermore, you can name any price you want." In Zhuo Aigua's opinion, Yi Mo didn't dress like a wealthy person, so money should be a good motivator to him. However, he didn't know that if Yi Mo didn't want to go to Guilin himself, he wouldn't be able to motivate him even with 1 million since Yi Mo still had 50,000 on him. Guilin? Yi Mo stopped his steps. The place he wanted to go happened to be Guilin. If it was along the way and he had money to earn, he wouldn't mind. However, if it were something dangerous like what he did with Wendong, then he wouldn't want to do it. Although he wasn't scared, he didn't want to become a henchman every time he met someone. He had an identity now anyways. He wasn't scared that he couldn't buy a plane ticket. "Fine, let's go talk." Yi Mo thought that he couldn't leave tonight anyway, so he might as well have a talk with him. The 2 found a quiet cafeteria and sat down. Zhuo Aigua was straightforward and said, "Actually, something urgent came up which is forcing me to go to Guilin. I have to meet up with the gang leader at the Flowing Snake Town to exchange some things. However, Flowing Snake is further down than Gui Lin, and that place is too chaotic. Originally, I was waiting here for someone to go with me. But friend, you are so much stronger than him, so if you are willing to come with me to Gui Lin, you can name any price. In fact, Flowing Snake is no longer a part of Gui Lin. I need to take a few hours car ride to reach Flowing Snake after I get off the plane at Gui Lin Airport. You know that there are no problems in flying straight from Xianshan to Gui Lin. However, Flowing Snake is close to the borders of a few countries and is the place where some ethnic minorities live. I said that the public security is chaotic there, but in fact, there is no public security at all. After Zhuo Aigua had finished, he looked at Yi Mo filled with hope. There was one sentence that he omitted, which was that Flowing Snake was the place where the fugitives and mercenaries of different countries gathered at, and such things as killings and fighting occurred every day. Yi Mo frowned as he barely knew anything about Gui Lin. He heard that Gui Lin was a borderline city, so if the Song family discovered him, he could go on the other side of the border at any time. He really hadn't heard of the place closer to the border that Zhuo Aigua talked about. As for whether or not it was chaotic, he didn't care at all. After thinking for a while, Yi Mo said, "In fact, I was also planning to go to Gui Lin, as I want to find an opportunity to develop in that place. However, it will be my first time going there. I heard you saying that Flowing Snake is closer to the border, so I think I will have a greater chance of development going in this town instead. As for the payment, I don't need it. If you have some familiar places at Flowing Snake, then keep one in mind for me." After hearing Yi Mo, Zhuo Aigua hurriedly shook his hand. "Don't ever go to Flowing Snake to develop. If you want to do business, you should stay at Gui Lin. I have some contacts in Gui Lin, and I also have a house there that I don't need and could simply give to you. In my case, the only reason for me to go to Flowing Snake is that I don't have any other choice. If I had, I would definitely not go there." Yi Mo smiled faintly and said, "Where there are dangers, there are opportunities. I will go to Flowing Snake." Seeing that Yi Mo had made up his mind, Zhuo Aigua didn't try to persuade him anymore. After all, Yi Mo was a master. Finally, he said, "No problem, I should be able to find a place in Flowing Snake." Zhuo Aigua understood Yi Mo's meaning. He had heard of this place before. Although it was a wicked city, it was easy to do things as long as you paved your way with money first. Yi Mo nodded and said, "The business I do is a bit illegal. The further away it is, the better." Zhuo Aigua opened his mouth but eventually didn't say anything. From his many years of experience in the business industry, Yi Mo didn't seem like those cunning and sly people. However, the way he talked sounded like he wanted to join gangs. Chapter 47, So That's It. Chapter 47, So That's It. Ninghai University. Yun Bing was feeling irritated these few days. She tried to see if she could find Yi Mo, but she hadn't seen him for a long time. Initially, although Yi Mo didn't go to her class often, she could still often see him going to the library, yet these last few days, she hadn't even seen his shadow. Originally, she thought that after Yi Mo had disappeared, she would be able to calm down and keep doing what she wanted. However, she was constantly reminded of the fact that Zheng Wenqiao and her schoolmate being beaten until they became mentally disabled was related to her. She wanted to ask Yi Mo about the event, but his attitude was horrible at the time. He had even wanted to throw her into the lake. That bastard. She suspected that not only he had looked at her body, but he might have even touched it, seeing how cocky he was to her. Thinking about this, Yun Bing immediately felt furious and started wondering if perhaps Ninghai was no longer suitable for her, which would force her to go back to Beijing. After thinking about leaving Ninghai for a while, Yun Bing actually gasped a sigh of relief and thought that she should have left long ago. The first thing Yun Bing did when she returned to her home wasn't to cook like she used to but pack her stuff. After she had completely packed her things, she started cleaning the place and found an SD card in her room. Yun Bing picked up the 8GB SD card near the corner and felt confused, as she had never used SD cards. However, she immediately thought of the camera that she had found, smashed to pieces that day after Yi Mo left. However, all the things inside it were broken, and since she didn't know what had happened, she didn't bother looking too much into it. But now, she found a storage disk and immediately thought that it should be the camera's, the one that she couldn't find when she had woken up and saw the mess that was left that day. It looked like this was exactly the one she had been looking for, but she didn't expect it to be in the corner of the room. If she wasn't tidying the house today, she actually wouldn't have found it. Yunbing opened up her laptop and put the SD card in. She found only one video file and opened it with the embedded player. Immediately, the screen showed an image and voices could be heard. "Young Master Qiao, I am ready." It was the voice of her schoolmate who drugged her. "Start when I go on this woman. Remember to film it clearly and capture all the specifics, especially when she moans. I want all of it. I don't believe that she won't cooperate after all that." The image showed Zhen Wenqiao. Watching the video, Yunbing was literally so angry that she was shaking. What made her more embarrassed and outraged at the same time was that she was the one to pull apart her own clothes, and she immediately understood what happened. It should have been from the drink she had drunk that day, which had an aphrodisiac in it. On the screen, her face was ruby red, her eyes were filled with lust, and she had pulled off the clothes in front of her chest. This showed just how potent the drug was. Just as Yunbing didn't know what to do anymore, the door in the screen was kicked open. Yimo, who had his face covered, came in. When Yunbing saw to this part, she was finally relieved and had already a subtle understanding of what had happened. "Friend, what do you want to do? If you just want money, we don't need to cross paths, and we can let you play after we finish enjoying ourselves." This is a high-quality woman. Zhen Wenqiao was wary of Yimo as he was talking. At the same time, he was putting back on the clothes he was about to take off. Human scum. Yimo just spoke 2 words and kicked Zhen Wenqiao. The following scene was very blurry. Then she saw her schoolmate fight with Yimo. It seemed to be very brief, and the video just stopped there. Afterward was an entirely black screen. Although the content of the video was limited, from what she had gathered so far, Yunbing had already guessed a few things. It should be that Yimo saw these people abduct her and followed them, then he beat them up in her home. Yimo had broken the door to save her, but as for how he eventually had dealt with the effects of the drug, Yunbing wasn't completely certain. However, she knew that Yimo didn't do anything more physical to harass her. No wonder the second morning, those two became mentally disabled and were thrown on the square. It was Yimo who did it. Yunbing suddenly stood up as she realized that she had wronged Yimo, who saved her life. If it weren't for Yimo, what would the results have been? Yunbing didn't dare to imagine. Perhaps there was no other way out than suicide. This Zheng Wenqiao was so evil. However, she had no idea when she got on his bad side. Yunbing thought again and realized now wasn't the time to care about other people's things. She should be trying to contact Yimo. He saved her, yet she repaid his benevolence with malfeasance. Yunbing suddenly felt embarrassed. However, she was a very grateful person. Since she was wrong, she knew that she should immediately find Yimo and apologize, then thank him for saving her life. Why didn't Yimo tell me the truth? However, Yunbing understood very quickly. That day when Yimo was just wiping his face, she had woken up for barely a moment and fainted again, and perhaps Yimo didn't even realize it. Or maybe, since this thing involved the vice mayor's son, he might have been scared that she might be burdened mentally or reveal something and end up being the one to suffer. Besides, with her impression of Yimo, would she believe him even if he had said it? "Thank you, Yimo." She suddenly felt that he didn't seem so annoying. When a person's mentality changed, the person's views of someone else might change too. When she was tidying the room, she still felt that Yimo was the most detestable person, yet now, she felt he was quite handsome. No, I must apologize in front of his face, she thought. He had saved her life, and some things couldn't be resolved even with death. Even if she killed herself for this, it would only ruin her reputation. Should I find Yimo? But I hadn't seen him for a long time. I know, I will go to class tomorrow and ask if someone knows where Yimo is. In today's English class, what made all the students in the class drop their glasses was that the usual cold, merciless Bing actually asked about Yimo whereabouts. After class, Yunbing didn't leave and asked on the podium, "Yimo hasn't been here for a long time, do you guys know where he went? Is there anyone among you that can contact him?" Silence, a long silence. When at last even Yunbing didn't know what to do, finally a student answered, "Yimo is the closest with Shishio, however, Shishio hasn't come for a long time either. There is also Su Mai who knows Yimo, I saw them talk last time at the library." After Yunbing had left, the classroom erupted again. Yimo not only knew an incredibly breathtaking woman who even came for him multiple times. Now, even merciless Bing had asked about him. This Yimo really was almighty. Sumai was a celebrity in Ninghai University and, at the same time, she was also a student of Yun Bing, so of course she knew her. When Sumai heard Yun Bing asking her about Yimo, she was stunned at first but soon returned to her composure as she said, "Mrs. Yun, Yimo is a wicked man down to the root, you don't need to be angry at him, even my cousin almost fell for his trap. This person really knows how to disguise himself." Yun Bing was astonished for a moment and thought, why would I be angry with Yimo when I'm trying so hard to show my gratitude? However, she didn't rebuke Sumai. After all, that was her point of view, and she had her own. Wasn't she also a hater of Yimo before? "Sumai, actually, I have something urgent for Yimo," Yun Bing said helplessly. Something urgent? It seemed that Mrs. Yun really had something urgent. As she thought of her words, Sumai was immediately reminded of that day when Yun Bing wanted to slap Yimo in anger. She subconsciously looked at Yun Bing's stomach and thought, wasn't Yimo impotent? Did he also create a problem there? Of course, Yun Bing didn't know Sumai's dirty mind and asked worriedly again, "Do you know where he is?" Sumai returned to herself and shook her head, "I don't know, but my cousin Su Jingwen might know. Why don't you ask her?" Chapter 48, Robber Stopping You in the Tracks. Chapter 48, Robber Stopping You in the Tracks. Su Jingwen felt the bracelet on her wrist, and suddenly, she regretted giving 3 beads to Ning Qingxue. She felt that she shouldn't have listened to Su Mai's words and changed her opinion of Yimo. Even if that day she saw that teacher saying awful things about Yimo with her own eyes, it didn't necessarily mean that it was Yimo's fault. Perhaps this teacher was wrong. Besides, even if it was Yimo's fault, it didn't have anything to do with her, so she wouldn't be affected. If similar things were to happen again, she would rather believe Yimo. After all, she knew Yimo, but she didn't know this teacher. You know one's face, but you don't know one's heart. On the surface, the teacher looked cold, but it didn't mean she was actually like this. She believed that Yimo wasn't like what the teacher and Sumai said about him. However, she already gave the 3 beads to Ning Qingxue, and she couldn't really ask them back. She could only blame Ning Qingxue for picking the perfect time to ask for it. If it had been a while since her meeting with Yun Bing, perhaps even a single day, she would have changed her mind. Luckily, she only gave 3 beads to Ning Qingxue. If she gave her the whole thing, she would probably be regretting so much more now. After all, Yimo gave this to her. Although it wasn't worth much, it was the only one out of all her presents that were handmade by the person himself. She wanted to visit Yimo but didn't know where he was, even Ning Qingxue didn't know. Li Mumei didn't either, but she still wanted to ask, just in case. Su Jingwen took out her phone and wanted to call Li Mumei to ask if she knew where Yimo was, but suddenly, her phone rang. The call was actually made by that teacher, Yun Bing, and she knew that only Sumai could have given her number. After arranging to see each other, Yun Bing came very quickly and saw Su Jingwen within half an hour. Hearing Yun Bing's intentions, Su Jingwen was very surprised. "What? You want to see Yimo? Why? The last time I asked you about him, you said that he was a..." Su Jingwen didn't finish her sentence, but her meaning was very clear. "Since you are already talking about Yimo like that, why do you still want to see him?" However, Su Jingwen just didn't want to say it in front of Yun Bing. After all, they weren't familiar with each other. Although she really wanted to see Yimo, it didn't mean that she wanted to take Yun Bing with her. "Sorry, I misunderstood him last time. I want to see him so I can apologize to him." Yun Bing was very straightforward. As soon as Su Jingwen heard what she said, her heart felt a bit lighter as she was right about Yimo. However, she disliked people like Yun Bing more who didn't even figure out what happened before saying this and that about someone. This type of woman was very annoying. It was right for her to apologize after she had said terrible things about Yimo, and she even wanted to see Yimo herself now. After a short call with Li Mumei, Su Jingwen knew that there was still no news of Yimo. It was as though he had just suddenly vanished without leaving a trace. What? Where did Yimo go? Yun Bing was very disappointed. She even suspected that Su Jingwen disliked her and didn't want her to know where Yimo went, but looking at Su Jingwen's expression, She knew that Su Jingwen wasn't lying to her. Yi Mo moved to Zhuoaigua's hotel and went on the plane at 8 a.m. the following day. Fortunately, he didn't even need to worry about the plane tickets since Zhuoaigua had it all figured out. 2 hours later, the plane stopped at Guilin City Airport, and nothing troublesome happened on the way. It appeared that Zhuoaigua was more reliable than that Wendong. Wendong promised Yi Mo there would be nothing, but in the end, if Yi Mo wasn't in the second stage of Kai gathering and was particularly careful, he might have lost his life there. If that woman lost her life, so be it, but he, Yi Mo, was innocent. It wasn't worth for him to lose his life for $50,000. Yi Mo, we've arrived at Guilin Airport now, and someone will pick us up soon. My plan is to go straight to Flowing Snake so we can avoid sleeping one night at Guilin and any unnecessary trouble. Zhuoaigua seemed to want to get it done immediately so he could leave this damned place as fast as possible. He didn't want to stay a moment longer, but this situation was exactly what Yi Mo wanted. He didn't want to waste time on these unnecessary things either. After the two had walked out of the airport, an Audi car drove over. The driver was a relatively innocent-looking youth. When he saw Zhuoaigua, he respectfully called him boss. This is my chauffeur Xiao Yu, he's also my employee. Although he doesn't practice martial arts, he had been a few times to Flowing Snake and is relatively familiar with the place. Zhuoaigua introduced him casually. Yi Mo glanced at the youth and knew that he only looked fairly strong but didn't learn any martial arts. Although this young chauffeur didn't talk much, his driving was steady yet fast. After leaving Guilin for 2 hours, the car left from the decent road to the steep mountain ones. It was another 2 hours before the roads finally got better, but at this point, there wasn't even a village to be seen around, it was all barren wilderness. Yi Mo didn't know why Zhuoaigua came here, but this place was indeed far off. No wonder he needed someone to come with him. However, he really liked it here. In some sense, he was running for his life, and this place was the best for him to cultivate and hide. A colossal organization like the Song family wasn't something that Yi Mo could mess with at this point. The car went on for another 10 minutes and entered a big valley. As soon as the car went in, Yi Mo heard some sound from behind. He opened the window to look back and saw that the way they came from had been blocked. Zhuoaigua and the chauffeur also noticed this situation. Zhuoaigua's face immediately became awful, but the driver seemed indifferent. He looked at Zhuoaigua once and said, "Boss, you just need to give them some money, but don't worry, these people usually only come for money." Zhuoaigua nodded, and after the chauffeur had driven the car another 100 meters, they were stopped, and it appeared that it wasn't just their car, but also another Mercedes that was also stopped. "Get out. All of you, get out," a bulky man wearing weird clothes and a megaphone in his hand yelled at them. He had 2 people by his side carrying a gun each, but they were incomparable with Wendong's AK. Yi Mo even suspected that even if they fired at him before he had noticed, he would still be able to dodge it. 2 people got off the Mercedes. There were 1 tall man and a tall-figured woman. The man was handsome-looking and was a bit bulky. His clothes were obviously from famous brands. Although Yi Mo didn't care about brands, he still knew some of them. Unexpectedly, the man was pale-faced, as if something like this happening to him was actually surprising. The woman turned her head and looked at Yi Mo's Audi, confused. This woman had a graceful temperament. Her perfectly fitted jeans complemented her long legs and full bottom, making it very eye-attracting. She had some faint makeup on her face, and half a silver necklace showing at her snow-white neck made her seem very sophisticated. Although she wasn't as pretty as Su Jingwen and Ning Qingxue, her long hair with her temperament gave her a unique flavor. The woman obviously had a special relationship with the handsome man as she was standing close behind the man, and although her face looked worried, she wasn't as scared as the man. Chapter 49, Slow-Paced Walk. Chapter 49, Slow-Paced Walk. Zhuoaigua had already gotten off, so did Yi Mo and the chauffeur Xiao Yu. Yi Mo looked around. Other than the man calling out to them and the 2 with the guns beside him, there were another 2 behind them that blocked their path. Including 2 more at the front blocking them, there was a total of 7 people, of which 6 were armed with guns. "Give us $50,000, and you may leave," the man with the megaphone said. "Wasn't it 10,000 before? Why is it suddenly 50,000 now?" Xiao Yu seemed to know the situation and asked, "What? Talk more *T, and I'll kill you. I decide on how much money we take." The man who stopped the BMW heard Xiao Yu's words and waved his gun, reproaching him arrogantly. Okay, I have the money. $50,000, I'll give it to you immediately." The youth had a pale face and acted immediately, turning around and took 50,000 from his car. The man in front took the money and waved his hand. "You can go." The tall youth immediately got in the car and said, "Xiao Lei, let's hurry and leave, don't go to Flowing Snake, we should go back immediately." The woman called Xiao Lei looked at Yi Mo and the two other people with him and said worriedly that she barely said 2 words but was immediately interrupted by the youth. "They are driving such a good car, they definitely will have the money, we don't need to worry." Just as he was speaking, he was also interrupted. "Punk, you can leave by yourself. We'll take her for a few days, you can come and pick her up later. You woman, come over here." The man with the gun spoke and pointed at the tall girl Xiao Lei. Hearing the man's words and his finger that was pointing at her, her face immediately went pale. I already gave the money to you, please let us go." When the tall youth heard that they wanted him to leave Xiao Lei behind, his face that had just recovered some color, turned pale and ugly once again. "I will count from 5, if you still stay here, then I won't be so nice anymore." The man who said that the girl was to stay, interrupted the young man's words and said coldly while raising his gun. Then, he started counting. "Wait, I'll leave." The youth suddenly charged toward his Mercedes, he left behind a small bag and quickly ignited the engine, then he turned his vehicle and actually started to drive back on his own. He was so fast that, at this moment, the man with the gun had only counted backward to 4. Luckily, this area was open, otherwise, it would have been really hard for the young man to turn with his speed. The robbers kept their word and, seeing how this man fled, they all laughed as they opened up a way for him to pass instead. The woman called Xiao Lei was still here and had a paler complexion. Her lips were trembling, but she still couldn't say anything for a long time, she only kept moving back until she retreated to Yi Mo's car. "It's your turn, you need to be fast to take out the money, and don't waste our leisure time." The 7 men had already gathered around them. "Xiao Lei, you are journalist Xiao." At this moment, Zhuo Aigua recognized who the girl was and suddenly exclaimed. Obviously, he knew this girl. Xiao Lei suddenly turned around and saw Zhuo Aigua. The person in front of her she was familiar, but she didn't recognize who he was. However, with someone knowing her, she seemed to have found a place where she could hide and quickly retreated behind Yi Mo. She felt her heart freezing, facing these bulky men who were staring at her like hungry tigers. "You are..." Xiao Lei looked worriedly at Zhuo Aigua. No matter what, Zhuo Aigua was countless times better than these thugs. "I am Zhuo Aigua, from Lanyi Corporation." Before Zhuo Aigua even finished his sentence, he was interrupted by Xiao Lei in surprise. "You are the CEO Zhuo of Lan Corp? Zhuo Yongqing's third uncle. I really didn't think that I would see you here." Xiao Lei suddenly stopped as she remembered the situation she was in. Although Zhuo Aigua was someone familiar, even if Zhuo Aigua didn't leave her behind, he wouldn't be able to protect her from the thugs. Her heart sunk once again and no longer had the joy of seeing Zhuo Aigua in a foreign land. "I didn't think you guys knew each other. Hurry the F***ck up and give me the money, then P***ss off. Woman, come over here or I'll shoot all of you down. Don't blame me for not giving you a chance. King hell." The man who had his eyes locked on Xiao Lei woofed carkily. Zhuo Aigua managed to calm down in this situation. He knew Xiao Lei as she was a famous journalist in Beijing and went especially to those dangerous front lines to do interviews. Zhuo Aigua wouldn't be able to let a woman she knew be dragged away by thugs to be our ped. "Yi Mo, do you have any idea?" Zhuo Aigua knew Yi Mo could fight, but facing 7 thugs with guns, this wasn't the same with the thieves back in the market. "Who are these people?" Yi Mo asked plainly as if not seeing the gun pointed at him. "They are all mercenaries and thugs from inland and other countries. These people often walk on the border of China, Vietnam and a few other countries. They would kill as they wished but they mainly robbed." Zhuo Aigua knew some about this, otherwise, he wouldn't be asking for Yi Mo to help him. "How many people do they have?" Yi Mo asked another question again. It said that there were 13 of them and called themselves the 13 Turbos. However, I heard that they had a fight with another gang and 6 of them died. Now, there are just these 7 remaining. Usually, they only want money, but if you didn't cooperate, they would kill people immediately. They barely took the women, but there was rarely a woman of this caliber coming here. This time, it was the chauffeur who replied. He came here a few times and was more familiar than Zhuo Aigua. When Xiao Yu talked about women, he subconsciously looked at Xiao Lei and didn't continue talking. Everyone knew what he was thinking. Why did a woman like you come here? Yimo nodded and said, Boss Zhuo, leave this to me, you 3 get on the car first. F***ck, wasting our time, Yang Pai, kill one first. Since these people, the only one without a gun, the one holding a megaphone in his hands, saw Yimo and them talking for too long and was getting impatient. Bang! Before the man had even finished speaking, the man beside him fired his gun. Obviously, he was thinking the same thing as the man with the megaphone. Unfortunately, his target was Yimo. At the same time he fired his gun, Yimo had jumped up and kicked him right in the face. The man didn't even make a noise before collapsing. The 2 people beside him, including the one holding the megaphone, also collapsed, and yet, Yimo wasn't even hurt. Yimo kicked 3 people consecutively, and before he even dropped to the ground, he copied Wen Dong's way and kicked on the hilt of the 2 guns which flew out and went over Zhuo Aigua's head. Then, there were another 2 deep sounds as the 2 men behind Zhuo Aigua were struck in the head by the guns Yimo kicked out and fainted. The 2 remaining men quickly reacted and raised their weapons to shoot. Bang! Bang! There were 2 more gunshots. There was another crack, and only then did Zhuo Aigua and the others saw what happened despite their fear. Yimo was holding up their wrists which made the guns shooting into the air, and the cracking sound was probably Yimo breaking their wrists. Yimo didn't want to kill people in front of a journalist in case this woman would spread the word everywhere. That's why he didn't use the metal nails, otherwise, he could have solved the problem with a few nails even quicker. Zhuo Aigua stared at Yimo in shock. He knew that Yimo was strong but didn't think of him to be this competent. He seemed to have dodged the first bullet before attacking, and then faced 6 guns like he was having a stroll. He then casually proceeded to beat them down. This wasn't a fight, this was a show. The driver also opened wide his mouth. He didn't even dare to believe that this innocuous-looking young man who came with his boss was this strong. After Xiao Lei's initial shock, she immediately watched the fight with fascination. This was her first time meeting someone with such refined martial arts which was completely like something made in the action movies. It was a pity, however, that she wasn't able to film it. She had already forgotten the situation she was in not long ago. But then, she remembered what had happened and couldn't help but to feel grateful toward Yimo. If he didn't intervene, she would probably have been living a life that was better dead. It seemed that she couldn't be so impulsive anymore. Thinking about Wang Qianjun who had run away before, she sighed to herself. One could only see a person's true character in times of crisis. Even Zhuo Aigua was countless times better than that handsome Wang Qianjun. Thud, Yimo kicked one thug in the stomach, sending this person flying many meters away who fainted as he reached the ground. Chapter 50, Chaotic Flowing Snake. Chapter 50, Chaotic Flowing Snake. After Yimo had knocked the last opponent out, he turned to the driver and said, "Come over and help me out with a small favor, drag these scum with me."
"I'll help you."
Xiao Lei rushed up, her face still red. Apparently, her excitement hadn't died down. It was as though she met the legendary prince on a white stallion that suddenly came down to rescue her. It was like a dream, and things happened too fast. Zhuo Aigua had already calmed down. He silently rejoiced about his correct decision and further made up his mind that he was to establish a good connection with Yimo no matter what. He might be the student of some legendary ancient martial arts master for all he knew. Although he heard that there were some ancient martial arts families in Beijing, these families were usually very mysterious and wouldn't come out into the normal world, nor would they become athletes either. However, from what he knew, some families would select a few elite members to go into the special departments of the country. These departments only served the country, and even some leaders couldn't have the privilege of being protected by these people. Yimo looked curiously at Xiao Lei who ran over excitedly and shook his head speechlessly. This woman's mood changed so fast. He didn't talk to her and just carried two unconscious thugs into the forest. The chauffeur Xiao Yu also dragged two people and followed him. Yimo dumped the two in the woods and carried over another two. Xiao Lei saw that Yimo ignored her and was a bit annoyed, but even when she used all her might, she couldn't keep up with Yimo while dragging someone. At last, Xiao Yu helped her pull that one away. Seeing that all 7 of them had been brought here, Yimo told Xiao Yu, "You guys go in the car and wait for me a bit, I'll come over soon." After Xiao Yu had left, Yimo kicked one of them awake. These people, mostly from Yu, were blocking the roads and robbing its passers-by. After he had kicked all of them awake, Yimo asked where their base was and found out that it was actually in a private manor not far away from Flowing Snake Town. Also, it was pretty much as Xiao Yu said, there were indeed 13 people before, but now, there was just 7 of them remaining. At first, Yimo had planned to destroy their base when he would reach to Flowing Snake as he didn't like to leave things unfinished, but since there was no one left, he didn't plan on going anymore. Yimo dumped all of their bodies into the mountain stream. He had only found some Yu currency on these people, but Yimo didn't take a single one. To him, this money was worth as much as money for the dead, perhaps even less. He didn't understand how these people would be so poor when they robbed all day. Maybe they just didn't carry the valuable things with them and left everything at their hideout. When Yimo returned to the mountain road, Xiao Yu and Zhuo Aigua had cleared out the obstacles. The 3 had already got into the car and were waiting for him. Unexpectedly, no one asked about where the thugs went after he got inside the car. "I can't take this money, you drove off the thugs, so you keep it." Xiao Lei gave the $50,000 Zhuo Aigua had offered her to Yimo. Yimo pushed it aside and said, "No need, you can keep the money. I'm hired by Boss Zhuo, and he's already paying for my salary. Besides, your friend ditched you, so take that as his compensation." I don't know him, that animal. Xiao Lei still wanted to say something, but Yimo just told Xiao Yu to start driving. "Mr. Yi, we are really lucky to have you with us this time. If it weren't for you, we would have really been in trouble this time." Zhuo Aigua hurriedly expressed his gratitude to Yimo. Zhuo Aigua was telling the truth. If he hadn't met Xiao Lei, he would have only lost tens of thousands of dollars. However, after meeting her, Zhuo Aigua's character wouldn't allow him to be a bystander as she was taken away, and if any conflict had occurred, the results would have been disastrous. Yimo waved his hands and said, "Boss Zhuo, you are too polite, this was nothing. Besides, this is what we agreed upon at the beginning, otherwise, what would be the point of hiring me?" Hearing Yimo's words, Zhuo Aigua's was in a good mood and said, "I'm a few years older, if you don't mind, Mr. Yi, just call me Brother Zhuo, and I'll just call you Brother Yi." "This sounds great." Yimo nodded in approval. Zhuo Aigua was not a bad person, someone who was worth connecting to. When Xiao Lei asked for Yimo's name from Zhuo Aigua, she felt this name was a bit familiar, as though she heard it somewhere before, but just couldn't recall it for the moment. Journalist Xiao, although Flowing Snake is a borderline town, it is one of the most chaotic places in the region, and it's even the boundary between 3 countries. "Why would you come here?" Zhuo Aigua turned his head and asked. Xiao Lei's thought process was interrupted and could only respond helplessly. "It's because I heard that the tourists who come to Guilin would disappear near the famous tourist spots, so I wanted to come here and interview a few people. After coming here, I found out that most people had gone missing after going to Flowing Snake, so now, I wanted to go there to see for myself. If I didn't encounter you guys, I really don't know what would have happened." "I'm really grateful." Yimo was laughing to himself. This female journalist was too naive. She was too used to living in big cities that she thought if she just took out her journalist license, those thugs would just surrender. He was literally speechless. Zhuo Aigua also had no idea what to say. He knew Xiao Lei, she was a famous journalist that just rose to fame over the past couple of years. However, he wasn't familiar with her, so he couldn't point fingers in front of her face. Xiao Lei saw these people's complexions and understood how they thought, but she couldn't really rebuke them as she realized how naive she was. When she first wanted to come to Guilin, Wang Qianjun wanted to go with her no matter what, so he accompanied her all the way to Guilin and even got a BMW in Guilin City to drive her to Flowing Snake. Wang Qianjun's handsome appearance did transmit people a good feeling, and she had a good feeling towards him as well, it was probably not long before she would have agreed to become his girlfriend. However, in a time of crisis, Xiao Lei understood that a handsome appearance was completely irrelevant to other things. Yi Mo didn't talk anymore, he only looked around and enjoyed the sight. There were wild forests everywhere and very little people, which was perfect for his cultivation, and even if the Song family chased him here, he would have a way to escape. Yi Mo didn't think he was an invincible being right now, and he knew that there were a lot of people stronger than him right now. Besides, even modern firearms weren't something he could defend against with his current powers. Zhuo Aigua and Xiao Lei, meanwhile, were engaged in a heated conversation. However, Xiao Lei glanced at Yi Mo from time to time, yet, seeing that Yi Mo didn't have the urge to talk and seemed to be meditating, she dismissed the thought of talking to him. Half an hour later, the Audi drove into a town, of which half was heavily fortified and had the appearance of a fortress. "This is Flowing Snake, we have to do a few things first, so we can only leave tomorrow. Journalist Xiao, how about you? Are you coming with us or moving on your own?" After the car had gone into Flowing Snake, Zhuo Aigua looked at Xiao Lei and asked. Before Xiao Lei could even answer, she saw two groups of people fighting in front of them. They were all holding weapons such as sticks, knives, and so on. In a short moment, a few people who were bleeding all over fell to the ground, moaning and screaming. However, after a long time, a group of individuals who looked like the police came over, and these people who were madly fighting just left while carrying the injured away. Surprisingly, the police didn't follow them and just went straight back to what they were doing. Xiao Lei's heart was beating rapidly as she looked on. She didn't think that things like this would occur in public, which gave her a shocking awakening from her previously naive thoughts. Flowing Snake is basically a place of anarchy, which was originally covered by the wilderness. However, after the 70s, due to the war, there were asylum seekers who gathered here. They came from the different countries around here and formed a fort-like town in the region. The police you saw previously were impromptu, therefore, there is hardly any place more chaotic than here. As if he had seen Yi Mo and Xiao Lei's shock, Zhuo Aigua took the initiative to explain. Although this was the first time he came to Flowing Snake, he had already gathered a lot of information before. "I think I'll stay with Uncle Zhuo." Xiao Lei no longer dared to be that lone heroic journalist and chose to stay with them without hesitation. Chapter 51, Ning Hai Magical Doctor. Chapter 51, Ning Hai Magical Doctor. After going into Flowing Snake, the Audi stopped in front of a stone house that Yi Mo thought to be interesting due to its unique design. It had a half-circular shape looking similar to the tents in Mongolia, and although there were multiple windows, they were tightly fitted between the stones on the wall. Zhuo Aigua didn't let Xiao Yu and Xiao Lei go in with him and just asked Yi Mo to follow him. The space inside the room wasn't small, there were more than 20 people in it, and each and every one of them looked ferocious as they were surrounded by killer's qi. Even those who didn't understand Kai or qi, could tell these people would kill if they had to. Other than the two armed men besides the long-haired man sitting at the top with a face full of ferocity, everyone else had either swords or custom-made knives. Seeing Zhuo Aigua and Yi Mo walk in, two ferocious-looking youth demanded to search Yi Mo and Zhuo Aigua before the long-haired leader even said anything. However, when these two approached Yi Mo grabbed one with each hand and threw them aside like harmless chickens. The two flew straight out the door like cannonballs in perfect formation. Seeing this, all the people in the room raised up the blades in their hands, waiting for the command of the long-haired man at the top. The man sitting in the top seat saw Yi Mo defend himself effortlessly, and shock flashed across his eyes. However, he immediately got over it and waved his hand, signaling his men not to be impulsive. After a brief moment, he simply said to the two people beside him, "You two leave first, Rock and Shadow stay behind." At this moment, there was only Zhuo Aigua and Yi Mo in the room, together with the long-haired man and two of his subordinates. That leader knew that this youth was obviously someone not to be messed with, and although he greatly overpowered Yi Mo in numbers, it didn't necessarily mean that they would be a match for him. Since a normal person couldn't just throw out two bulky men so casually, he might as well be more forgiving, and he wasn't planning on devouring Zhuo Aigua anyway. The long-haired man looked at Zhuo Aigua and saluted with his fist. "Boss Zhuo, it's a pleasure to see you. May I ask who this is?" He chose his words carefully as he turned his head toward Yi Mo. Zhuo Aigua knew exactly what was going on, This person was afraid of Yimo, not him. Aigua immediately waved his hand and said, Chairman Fang, don't worry, he is my friend. He doesn't like to talk much and was just afraid something would happen to me, so he came along. I have already brought the item that you seek. What about your end of the deal, Chairman Fang? The long-haired youth looked scrupulously at Yimo once and procured a wooden box from a leather bag. As soon as the wooden box was taken out, Yimo felt an unusual kai. This definitely wasn't something normal and actually had a sliver of pure spirit kai. Yimo's eyes shimmered. He had the instinct that this thing would be useful for him. Show me your item first. The long-haired man held the wooden box and looked at Zhuo Aigua. Before Zhuo Aigua could speak, Yimo suddenly waved his hand, and the wooden box from the long-haired man flew by itself and landed right in Yimo's hands. This immediately scared the long-haired man, and he stood up abruptly. However, his shocked expression was immediately concealed. Now, his eyes not only looked at Yimo scrupulously but also with a deep fear and reverence. It wasn't only the long-haired man, but the two other people behind him, as well as Zhuo Aigua, who looked at Yimo in disbelief. What mutant ability was this? He simply waved his hands and was able to grab something from 6 to 7 meters away. Yimo wasn't fazed by the shocked eyes around him. He just reached his hands and opened the box, and inside, there was a black piece of vine. As Yimo picked up the vine, a faint spirit wave emanated from it. Purple heart vine? Yimo immediately understood that this was a section of the root of a purple heart vine. Seeing this here on Earth shocked Yimo, as it was a spiritual plant, and he knew that the spirit kai on Earth was scarce. He was already surprised when he had found the silver heart grass, much less this section of the purple heart vine. Unfortunately, there was only this tiny amount, if only there were more. Brother Yi. Zhuo Aigua was so shocked by Yimo's telekinetic ability that he stuttered while he tried to make sense of what had just happened. Before, Yimo was able to beat many enemies down swiftly just by himself, which meant, in Zhuo Aigua's eyes, that he had great ability. However, this telekinetic power could no longer be called a great ability. This was too outrageous. Brother Zhuo, this thing will be useful to me. I was wondering if you would be willing to compromise. If it had been billions of USD, Yimo would just ignore it. However, although this thing could be found easily where he came from, the probability to find it on Earth was minuscule. If it hadn't been for his good fortune, he wouldn't have been able to find it in his lifetime. Zhuo Aigua didn't seem to have come back into reality from Yimo's actions moments before. Now, he heard Yimo's words, which immediately woke him up. He said in a hurry, since Brother Yi likes it, then just take it. This dark purple root is indeed rarely seen. I only managed to find it in Flowing Snake, and only this small piece. Yimo heard Zhuo Aigua calling the purple heart vine as a dark purple root but didn't correct him. Perhaps that was what it was called here. After Zhuo Aigua had said his piece, he took out an envelope and gave it to the long-haired man. This is the check, take it. The long-haired man reacted and immediately walked in front of Yimo, saluting with his fists, and said, I'm Fang Nan. Right now, I'm a small leader of a small clan. I haven't asked for your honorable name yet, elder brother. He could already tell that Yimo wasn't an ordinary person and wanted to create a connection with him. Although Yimo was definitely younger than him, he still called Yimo elder brother. Yimo looked at this long-haired man. He wondered where he had obtained this plant and planned to ask him later. Besides, he had decided to live in Flowing Snake for a period of time, so it was necessary to have a good connection with the local snakes here. I'm Yimo. I plan to live at Flowing Snake for a period of time, Yimo said. Great. If Brother Yi needs to deal with any trivial things, just come to me, Fang Nan. I'll give this dark purple root as a greeting present for Brother Yi. Brother Zhuo, sorry, please take this check back. Fang Nan pushed the check back to Zhuo Aigua. Zhuo Aigua wasn't amused and pushed the check right back to Fang Nan. We've already agreed to this. This is my present to Brother Yi. How can I not pay for it? Seeing the two was getting into an argument, Yimo waved his and said, Chairman Fang, just take the check. You have a lot of brothers with you, and you need it for expenditure. By the way, Brother Zhuo, what need did you have for this dark purple root? Zhuo Aigua sighed and said, for some unknown reason, when my son turned 8, he suddenly got sick, which left him mentally disabled. During the past couple of years, I don't know how many hospitals I have been to and how many specialists I have seen, but none of them had any clue as to how to treat him. It was until some old Chinese doctor told me to use a dark purple root to make a beverage to drink every day for 3 years, and it might cure the problem. I used countless ways until I finally found out that Chairman Fang had a piece here, so I rushed over here. Originally, my big uncle saw a magical doctor at Ninghai, but when I made my way over, that doctor had disappeared. I thought that if that magical doctor could cure my big uncle's disease, then he could definitely cure my son's disease. Sigh. Unfortunately, I wasn't lucky enough. Furthermore, this dark purple root may not necessarily cure my son's disease, that Chinese doctor just said maybe. Anyway, it doesn't matter if Brother Yi takes it. Ninghai. Yi Mo repeated to make sure he didn't hear wrongly. He thought that since he just came over from Ninghai, maybe Zhuo Aiguo was talking about the old man that he had saved last time. Yes, Ninghai, they met him at Li Kang Hospital. My big uncle had his disease for many years, and many specialists made the same conclusions, yet, that magical doctor still managed to save my big uncle. Unfortunately, it was a heavenly fortune to encounter him once. It is too hard to find him again, Zhuo Aiguo said, as he was looking down gloomily. Meanwhile, Yi Mo was already sure that this magical doctor he talked about was none other than himself. Notes. 1. A little reminder clarification. Kai refers to the special Kai Yi Mo cultivates. It is used by the immortals who are called the cultivators. Qi is used by the martial artists or masters who cultivates on earth. The killer's qi is obtained after taking many lives and enjoying it. Chapter 52, Far-Off Living Place. Chapter 52, Far-Off Living Place. Yi Mo said after a moment of silence, Brother Zhuo, if you trust me, leave me an address. After my business here is over, I will go to your place to have a look, and perhaps I can cure him. However, I need to tell you that the dark purple root cannot cure your son's disease. I don't know where that old Chinese doctor heard it from, but it is definitely bullsh*t. Zhuo Aiguo yelped in surprise and grabbed Yi Mo's hands. Brother Yi, can you really help cure my son? Yi Mo nodded and said, it shouldn't be a big problem. Of course, I believe you, of course. The stuttering Zhuo Aiguo took out an exquisite name card and gave it to Yi Mo. This is my home address and contact number. Please, brother. He didn't think that Yi Mo was lying and believed that Yi Mo wasn't the type of person to brag either, much less after seeing Yi Mo's magical performance today. Although he hadn't been with Yi Mo for long, he felt that Yi Mo was a trustworthy person and a good friend. Yi Mo looked at the name card and nodded. However, I can't go to Beijing now. It would probably have to wait until a year from now. Yi Mo knew that he would be probably throwing himself into a trap going to Beijing now. Don't worry about it, as long as Brother Yi remembers, it's fine. Zhuo Aiguo didn't seem the slightest displeased at all. Instead, he was euphoric. Even if the dark purple root could cure his son, it needed at least 2 to 3 years. On the other side, even if Yi Mo said that he couldn't cure now, it meant that as long as he went there, it probably should be solved. Zhuo Aiguo knew which was the better choice. As for why Yi Mo didn't go with him now, he didn't think too much about it. Yi Mo was a magical person. He had his own errands to deal with. Plus, this wasn't his first day in the world. Yi Mo had to run to the borderline of the country, meaning that he had his troubles. As a friend, one didn't need to ask about everything. Haha, Brother Yi, I'll immediately order people to set up a feast to welcome you too. Fang Nan's happiness wasn't about doing the business deal today, but being able to meet someone like Yi Mo was definitely something to celebrate, and most importantly, he would be staying for some time. Just when Xiao Lei was panicking after waiting for so long, Yi Mo and Zhuo Aiguo came out, followed by a bulky, long-haired man. After the meal, Xiao Lei could tell that both the guests and the host were happy. Whether it was Zhuo Aiguo or that ferocious-looking man, they were all very respectful towards Yi Mo, and this respect came from the bottom of their heart. Zhuo Aiguo was the manager of a big Beijing entrepreneurship and was a wealthy man, but this big man didn't seem like the nice type. However, he was also extremely respectful toward Yi Mo. Although she had a lot of questions to ask, Xiao Lei knew that she wasn't familiar enough with Yi Mo. Thus, she asked Xiao Yu a load of questions, but Xiao Yu didn't know anything either. Their living places were organized by Fang Nan. However, Yi Mo went out after dinner. As for where, no one knew, except for Zhuo Aigua, who had a vague clue. Yi Mo went to the base of those 13 thugs, but to Yi Mo's disappointment, it was empty. He really didn't know how these people didn't have any savings after doing zero capital business for so long, which broke Yi Mo's wish of getting rich. Fang Nan came to Yi Mo and the others' living place early in the morning. Right now, Fang Nan's Pu Dao clan was one of the 3 great clans of Flowing Snake. The worst of the 3 great clans was the 13 Turbos. But now, the 13 Turbos were no more. Thus, Pu Dao clan became one of the 2 biggest clans in Flowing Snake. Because of Fang Nan taking good care of Zhuo Aigua and the others, they were very safe in Flowing Snake, and no one dared to harass them. The second day, Zhuo Aigua bid Yi Mo farewell as he was leaving Flowing Snake. "I'll send a few brothers to help you get to the big roads." Seeing that Zhuo Aigua and the others were leaving, Fang Nan told them that he would send some of his men to help Zhuo Aigua going back safely. Yi Mo didn't stop him. The 13 Turbos who blocked the road were already destroyed by him, so even without someone sending them, Zhuo Aigua and company would be in no danger. However, since Fang Nan took the initiative to send them, Yi Mo didn't say anything. Xiao Lei walked in front of Yi Mo and mumbled, Yi Mo, could you leave me your phone number? I would like to be able to thank you for saving my life when you come to Beijing." Although she mumbled at the start, she became more confident at the end. After all, she was a journalist. Yi Mo smiled and said, "Thanks, but it won't be necessary. In fact, I don't even have a phone, so I don't have a number to give you. You don't need to worry about such small things." Xiao Lei became dazed. From her perspective, Yi Mo wouldn't reject a beautiful lady like her who asked his number. No man would reject a pretty woman's invitation, and yet, Yi Mo did. She didn't believe that Yi Mo didn't have a phone. In these days, who wouldn't have a phone? Seeing Xiao Lei's awkwardness, although Zhuo Aigua knew that Yi Mo really didn't have a phone, he didn't correct her misunderstanding and only said, "Let's go. Otherwise, we won't make it to the plane to Xianshan today." Helpless, Xiao Lei could only endure the rejection and left with Zhuo Aigua. As for a place to cultivate, since there was Fang Nan's help, Yi Mo didn't need Zhuo Aigua's help anymore. The place Fang Nan arranged for Yi Mo was a pagoda nearly 10 kilometers away from Flowing Snake. Initially, this place sheltered a wandering monk who knew Fang Nan, and it was built with Fang Nan's support. However, 3 years before, this monk suddenly disappeared, leaving behind this pagoda. If Yi Mo didn't ask for such a rural place, Fang Nan would arrange a luxurious place for Yi Mo. That day, Fang Nan got a few clan members to clean up the pagoda, while Yi Mo just moved in. His main purpose was to grow the silver heart grass and research where the purple heart vine came from. According to Fang Nan, 7 years before, when he had been running for his life, he had found the body of a Tibetan Lama, in a valley near the border of Yu. On the body, he had discovered the wooden box and felt that this thing wasn't ordinary, so he had kept it, but only afterward did he realize that it was a dark purple root inside. In the end, Fang Nan had buried the body of the Lama nearby since he got the precious plant. Yi Mo asked for a map from Fang Nan with the exact location of where he buried the Lama, as he wanted to see for himself. Since this Lama had a purple heart vine, he probably had something else with him as well, so there was no harm in checking it. The pagoda at which Yi Mo lived wasn't small. It was more than 50 square meters, but more importantly, Yi Mo opened up some land around the pagoda which he prepared to grow the silver heart grass. Yi Mo didn't dare to plant all 39 seeds at once because he didn't know if this place was suitable for growing the grass, and if this place wasn't and he damaged all his seeds, he would be devastated. Although he wasn't sure if he were the only one to possess silver heart grass seeds, Yi Mo knew that even if there were some elsewhere, he wouldn't necessarily be able to find them. He planted only 19 seeds and then took care of their surroundings by making some protections. Afterward, Yi Mo prepared to go into the forest. After all, the seeds needed a month to germinate, and he didn't make any progress in his cultivation right now, so he wanted to check the place where Fang Nan buried the Lama. After notifying Fang Nan, Yi Mo left Flowing Snake and headed to the place where Fang Nan was running for his life before. Right now, the most important thing for him was to improve his strength. Notes: 1. Lama is a title for a teacher of the Dharma in Tibetan Buddhism. The name is similar to the Sanskrit term guru. Chapter 53. The results of the Song family's investigation. Chapter 53. The results of the Song family's investigation. The Song family of Beijing was definitely one of the most powerful families in China. In fact, they were also a member of the 5 greatest families of China. However, right now the atmosphere inside the Song family's compound wasn't comfortable for no other reason than that the only son of the leader of the family, Song Chiming, had died from a car crash, allegedly speeding through the night. Nevertheless, everyone in the Song family knew that Song Shaowen's death had nothing to do with speeding. Even if he had been in a rush and had been forced to be speeding along the way, he wouldn't be driving to a barren place like the Chinon Cliff. Furthermore, what would make him drive his car on the Fengjin Highway at midnight? Besides, how did the people of the Song family not know about Song Shaowen's character? He was the typical person afraid of troubles, so if he had something that required him to go past Fengjin Highway, he would only go during the day and definitely not at 3 to 4 a.m. What are the results of the investigation? As the elder of the Song family wasn't here, Song Chiming's words represented the authority of the Song family. Although he was calm looking on the surface, the veins on his hands were about to burst out, showing his rage. His only son was assassinated like this. Who had the guts to touch a member of the Song family? A middle-aged man stood up and said, "Leader, we have the results. Shaowen went to Hefeng a week ago but only stayed there for 1 day. Afterward, he left Hefeng and was probably headed to Ninghai with RFA and Wang Chuan. However, there wasn't any video recording of Shaowen's car on the highway of Ningfeng, or rather, it could be said that all the traffic cameras were shut down during the time Shaowen entered and left Ninghai. I sent people to investigate at Ninghai, and Shaowen had indeed asked people to shut down the cameras there. The only reason Shaowen would go to Ninghai would be for that Ning Qingxue. However, Ning Qingxue didn't leave Ninghai and went to Yu State 2 days later. Yet at the same time, Yi Mo, the one who married Ning Qingxue, disappeared the same night without a trace. Afterward, I completely examined the remnants of the car, but Yi Mo's body wasn't there, so either he had left the car midway, or he was never inside to begin with. According to the cameras at the Chinon Cliff Highway, Shaowen's BMW was driving properly but suddenly charged off the road and fell onto the cliff. Could someone have drugged the driver? A 50-or-so-year-old man on the side asked, but the middle-aged man shook his head and said, "It can't be." According to the roadside cameras, Shaowen's car had been driving normally everywhere else, except for the part in Ninghai where the cameras were turned off. No anomaly occurred until this happened suddenly at the Chinon Cliff. Do you know where Yi Mo is now? Song Chiming asked another question, but the middle-aged only man shook his head and said, "Currently, we don't know his whereabouts, but we did find a surveillance system in Yi Mo and Ning Qingshue's house. However, the content had been deleted, and we are in the process of recovering it." At this moment a 20-year-old or so man rushed inside while holding an USB in his hand, which he passed to the middle-aged man and said, "Uncle Hai, the content has been recovered. Check it immediately." Before the middle-aged man even spoke, Song Chiming said coldly. The USB was inserted into the computer, and the huge screen showed Yi Mo's life, as well as the scene in which Song Shaowen and his henchmen left with Yi Mo, so it does have something to do with him. The 50-or-so-year-old man looked at the fast-forwarded images and said in a fury. He didn't even think about who ran into someone else's house in the middle of the night. He was just angry that Song Shaowen died after leaving there. It seems that B*TCH of the Ning family didn't know at the time, so she probably deleted this afterward, a skinny man sitting below Song Chiming said. Even if she didn't know, this is related to her. There's no way that our Song family is going to let her go so easily, Uncle Hai, who was responsible for the investigation, said. Song Chiming's face was very bleak, but he waved his hand and said, "I won't let the Ning family go like that, but it's not just about Ning Qingxue. I will destroy the entire Ning family forever. Don't touch the Ning family for now. Capture that useless man of the Yi family first. It would be best to take him back to Beijing secretly. I will let him know that it isn't so easy to kill a member of the Song family." He caught his breath before speaking again. "Song Hai, you will be responsible for investigating where Yi Mo went and try to bring him back to Beijing in the shortest time possible. If that can't be done, then bring his head back as a sacrifice in front of Shaowen. Also, You need to investigate how Yi Mo made Shoan drive off the cliff. Yes, leader. Song Hai replied straightforwardly. That 50-or-so-year-old man frowned and said, "This Yi Mo is rather strange. He married the girl from Ning family, but why does he always sit under the tree? Is he able to cultivate qi? I heard a lot of ancient martial arts families like to sit and cultivate qi. If he really does have an ancient martial arts master, then this might be troublesome. Uncle Shun, I don't think this is possible. Yi Mo is a disabled man, even the Yi family didn't want him. Would a legendary ancient martial arts cultivators see any potential in him? Besides, even if he was picked up by someone, why was there not a single image of his master in that month of recording?" "Uncle Shun, I think you're thinking too much," Song Hai said. The man called Uncle Shun nodded and said, "It'd be best if this were the case. If he really did have an ancient martial art cultivator supporting him, then even if we're one of the 5 greatest families, it would probably be very unlikely for us to take revenge." The day that the Song family took away the recording from Ning Hai, Ning Qingxue knew it and immediately felt a burning sensation in her heart as she regretted not destroying that disc. She didn't think that the Song family would really come here to investigate, and it was implausible to believe that the Song family would not be able to recover the details. The only way was to contact Yi Mo immediately and notify him that the Song family knew about the truth. However, she didn't have or know any way to contact Yi Mo. After giving it plenty of thought, Ning Qingxue decided to tell her mom and said that she wanted to find Yi Mo, which surprised her mother immensely. She didn't think that so much had actually happened during her short trip, and even Song Shaowen's death was related to the Ning family. "Qingxue, right now it's not about finding Yi Mo, but about how we are going to deal with Song family's revenge. Clearly, with Song Qiming's character, there's no way he'd let this pass, especially you." Ning Qingxue's mother had a great insight to this. Ning Qingxue shook her head and said, "I owe Yi Mo for this, and now I have dragged you down as well. I'm really useless, and I'm too naive sometimes. I'm sorry, mother." Her mother sighed and said, "Although our family has separated from the Ning family, the Song family can't deal with us that easily. Qingxue, don't worry, first tell me exactly what happened between you and Yi Mo." Chapter 54, The Leisurely Person in the Forest. Chapter 54, The Leisurely Person in the Forest. Although Fang Nan gave him an approximate direction, Fang Nan couldn't remember it too clearly after all these years, and even though Fang Nan asked if he should come with him to help find it, Yi Mo knew that it would take a long time to find. Besides, the 13 turbos were just newly exterminated, so the resources of Flowing Snake needed to be redistributed, and there were many things Fang Nan needed to do. As such, he didn't allow Fang Nan to come with him. Plus, he would probably be faster by himself in the forest anyway. Yi Mo had been searching in this endless forest for 3 days, yet he still hadn't found where Fang Nan buried the llama. However, he did cross paths with danger many times. In only one day, he had met a wild cheetah, 2 wild wolves and 20 different types of venomous snakes. The most crucial information that Fang Nan gave him were 2 evergreen trees in the surrounding, yet these past few days, Yi Mo hadn't been able to find even one, much less 2. However, what Yi Mo lacked the least was patience. Although it was the depth of the forest, he decided to look farther and deeper the 4th day. However, he needed to fill his stomach before he went in. As Yi Mo roasted a wild rabbit, he was organizing in his head the places he had already looked over, when a few clear gunshots interrupted his thought process. As Yi Mo raised his head, he saw a robust man that was around 30 years old, who stumbled over and was holding a triple-edged military knife on his hand. The man was covered in wounds, his clothes were ragged and torn, but from what Yi Mo saw, the heaviest injury was the gunshot on his waist. Although this shot was near the side, blood had already dyed red his ragged clothes. At the same time Yi Mo saw this man, he also saw Yi Mo and became immediately shocked. He didn't think that he could find someone leisurely roasting a wild rabbit this deep inside the forest. Even with him running for his life, his starved stomach still couldn't resist but make a sound. Yi Mo looked at this fleeing man and immediately felt a familiar qi from him, which also had a feeling of a killer's qi to it as well, similar to Wang Shu, the one he had met at Su Jingwen's birthday party. They should be from the same group. Yi Mo immediately formed a conclusion in his head. However, he didn't know who would be chasing him like this. Just when Yi Mo was thinking about Wang Shu, more hurried footsteps could be heard behind the man, and soon, 3 men equipped with guns appeared in front of Yi Mo. The heavily injured man looked apologetically at Yi Mo but didn't say anything. The 3 men stopped after seeing the injured man had stopped. They also looked at Yi Mo, who was roasting a rabbit by the fire, with surprise. After all, not anyone could roast rabbits in a wild forest like this. This place wasn't safe. Even if you wanted to roast something, you would choose a quieter place, not here, where there were nowhere to hide in case of danger. None of the 5 people here said a word, and the atmosphere suddenly became awkward. Only the sound and the smell of Yi Mo roasting his rabbit were still lingering in the air. The 3 looked at each other and nodded. Then the slightly darker man said, "Friend, there's no business for you here. How about you move aside? We just want to capture the man who escaped here." The accent was a bit weird. Yi Mo stared weirdly at the man who talked and was just about to say, "This place isn't your home, why should I move?" But the other man suddenly raised his gun and threatened to shoot Yi Mo. However, before his fingers even pulled the trigger, a few hardly discernible sounds fluttered through the air, interrupting his movement. Suddenly appeared on all 3 of them a red dot in the middle of their forehead, and then, blood gushed out from it. The 3 of them looked at Yi Mo with their eyes wide open in disbelief as they collapsed on the ground. They didn't realize how anything could happen this fast, as this was, at most, a single breath of time. Yi Mo didn't like to kill people, but he was merciless to those who would threaten his life. The nails in his hands were only here to prevent someone pointing a gun at him ever again. The heavily injured man stared, his eyes wide open, unable to believe what had just taken place. The 3 who hunted him for so long were so easily killed by a man leisurely roasting a rabbit. It wasn't surprising that he dared to roast rabbits here. He was an unbelievable being. "The rabbit is ready, do you want some?" Yi Mo looked at the man who didn't speak for a long time and smiled plainly. He had a good impression of Wang Shu, and since this man most likely was connected to Wang Shu, it didn't matter if he invited him to some food. "Ah, okay, thank you. I'm Guoqi, thanks for saving my life just then." Guoqi saluted with his fist as his face became calmer. Yi Mo waved his hand and smiled. "It's nothing, fate brought this encounter, I'm Yi Mo." After slicing half of the rabbit, he took a few herbs from his backpack and crushed it before sprinkling it on top of it. Guoqi was confused as he watched the scene that didn't seem to be very hygienic. Although he had finished with the herb, Yi Mo didn't give that part of the rabbit to Guoqi. Instead, he said, "Come over, I'll check your wounds." Hearing Yi Mo's words and seeing what Yi Mo did before, Guoqi seemed to have understood that Yi Mo was fumbling with herbs for his wounds, so he quickly walked over. When Guoqi walked in front of him, Yi Mo raised his hand and, as he used his palm to hit the opposite side of Guoqi's gun wound, a bullet flew out like a comet, landing far away in the woods. Meanwhile, Guoqi didn't even feel a pinch of pain as the bullet from his waist was taken out and was shocked. How is this person so powerful? This was his first time seeing a bullet being taken out like this. As though he did not see Guoqi's shock, Yi Mo passed over the half of the rabbit in his hand, took out 2 more herbs and gave them to Guoqi. "Chew on the herbs and spread it on your gun wound and then eat this rabbit, you should be fine after that." After he had finished, Yi Mo didn't pay any more attention to Guoqi and started to eat his own half of the rabbit. Meanwhile, Guoqi was fascinated to discover that not only did his wounds not hurt anymore, but there was also a feeling of coolness, and started to wonder what kind of herb could have effects so potent. Immediately, Yi Mo became extremely mysterious in his eyes. This was no longer gratitude, but an unknown feeling of reverence. In a forest full of danger, he not only leisurely roasted rabbits, but he could heal his gun wound so easily and even took out his bullet just with a palm. This person appeared so mighty as he killed the Yu special forces without blinking. He definitely wasn't Yu, so Guoqi immediately said, "The 3 people before should be Yu. Our squad was ambushed by them on a mission, and apart from me, there are 2 team members who have died and another 3 survivors trapped in a cave, but I think they are probably in their hands at this point. Meanwhile, I escaped to find support." Yi Mo frowned and didn't say anything. He knew what Guoqi meant, but he wasn't a soldier. As for a team that was beaten like this by Yu, Yi Mo was contemptuous. Although he didn't want to help, Yi Mo had already a very bad impression of Yu since, as soon as he came to Flowing Snake, he was blockaded by a group of them. Even though he killed them all, in the end, he was still disgusted by them. Although I really want to help you, I have things to do here. I'm searching for something. Yimo stood up and was prepared to leave. He didn't know Guichi at all, and he saved his life just then. Besides, he had things to do. If it were convenient, then he wouldn't mind, but if he had to go out of his way to help, then he would feel that it was troublesome. Chapter 55. Lend a Helping Hand. Chapter 55. Lend a Helping Hand. Elder Brother Yi, our instructor has told us that the one who reaches the first place among us, or the strongest, is the elder brother. Although I'm a few years older than you, I know you're not an ordinary person, and you definitely are the person who would reach the first spot, so following our instructor's words, I'll refer to you as elder brother. I don't understand the great ideologies of a man's responsibilities in the affairs of the world, but the you bastards have been burning, raiding, and killing at our borderlines. There's no evil that they won't commit. 30 years ago, our army started to retaliate, but the Southern you abuse and humiliate before killing the Chinese in their territory. They burn Chinese factories, and countless compatriots have been brutally murdered. Although a few decades have passed, these devils haven't stopped their actions, and even though it's more subtle, they are still a threat to us. This time, a few of my team members were surrounded by the Yu, so even if I, Guichi, die, I will save them. On the behalf that we're all Chinese, I want to ask for your help. Moreover, since we're really familiar with the surroundings here, if you help me rescue my teammates, I'm willing to help you find what you're looking for. Guichi finished his monologue and looked at Yimo fervently. Yimo stayed silent for a moment. He didn't have any good impression for those Yu devils, and as for Guichi helping him with his search, that wouldn't be necessary. He had already been looking for a few days, so he didn't think that Guichi and his team could help him find it. However, this Guichi had some reason to his words. He was a Chinese right now, and since he should be helping out with this simple task. Thinking about this, Yimo nodded and said, Brother Guo is right, don't mind my words just then, I didn't think it through. Let's be on our way then. Meanwhile, tell me the situation in detail. A few pesky you are no threat to me. Thank you, Elder Brother Yi. Guichi saw that Yimo had agreed and saluted with his fist delightedly. He understood that Yimo wasn't a heartless person. He was probably living in reclusion for some time and had faint views of some concepts. Guichi picked up 3 guns and gave one to Yimo, but Yimo waved his hand. No need, I don't like to use guns, it's troublesome to hold in your hand. Guichi suddenly remembered the situation when Yimo killed those strong soldiers with his bare hands and gave up on the thought. After hearing Guichi's details on the situation, Yimo finally understood that it wasn't that Guichi and his squad were weak. There were 6 people in Guichi's squad, and when they were doing a mission on the borderline, they had been ambushed in the forest. Although the attacker didn't show their identity, Guichi firmly believed that they were Yu. In the ambush, 2 people died, and 3 were trapped. Only Guichi managed to escape. The place they were trapped at was called the Han Chan Cave. Guichi said that if it wasn't that the geology benefited them, their whole team would have been annihilated. When they were ambushed, they tried to break through, but the only one who managed to escape was him, and if it had not been for Yimo, even he wouldn't have been able to go any further. The Han Chan Cave wasn't very close, and Guichi led Yimo on a 2-hour walk before arriving. Just when they neared the cave, they heard a gunshot. When the gunshot sounded, Guichi immediately said in joy, they haven't been captured yet. This is my squad member's gun, I can tell by the sound. Meanwhile, Yimo was also overwhelmed with joy. However, it was because he had realized that the place Fang Nan was describing was exactly like this Han Chan Cave. Although he hadn't seen the evergreen yet, the surrounding was exactly as Fang Nan had described. It seemed that he needed to be more willing to help people. Otherwise, he was sure that he wouldn't have been able to find this place in 2 hours. Elder Brother Yi, what now? Although Guichi was an elite in the special forces, he knew that he was a far cry from Yimo. Now that he knew his teammates weren't in enemy hands, his thinking immediately became more fluid. However, he was aware that even if his teammates weren't in enemy hands, they probably wouldn't be able to last long. They were most likely going to run out of ammo very soon. Otherwise, if the team had enough ammunition, they wouldn't fire so scarcely. How many people are against us? Yimo returned to his senses. If he wanted to find what he was looking for, first, he had to finish off all the people that trapped Guichi's teammates here. From the number of gunshot sounds during the ambush, I think there were at least 20 people and, at the time, we had also finished off 3 to 4 men. It looks like my teammates haven't been captured yet, and my guess is that they are trying to hold out until the nightfall before breaking through the lockdown. However, the enemy should be aware of this too and wouldn't let my teammates last that long. I think they might be thinking of a strategy right now. Guichi's reply was quite precise. Yimo nodded and said, "You stay carefully behind me, and don't fire unless absolutely necessary. I'll take care of the rest." Guichi knew that Yimo silently killed 3 special ops at that time, so he didn't have the slightest doubt about his words. If he were in the shadows, then 16 people really weren't enough to deal with someone as mighty as him. He even wondered who was stronger between Yimo or Shu Shi, who the authority sent to teach them for 3 days. While Guichi was still thinking, Yimo had already moved out. The Han Chan cave was within a valley, so this place was easy to defend but hard to invade. Although he didn't know why those people chose to ambush Guichi here, Yimo knew that it was either due to a time constraint or Guichi's team was able to retreat here in time. Yimo's spirit sense could already reach out to a radius of 7 meters, and when it was close to the Han Chan Cave's valley, Yimo immediately discovered 6 people hidden not far away. If Guichi didn't make the wrong judgment, then it meant that they had reinforcements elsewhere. There was a loud bang as a bomb exploded outside the Han Chan Cave, creating a huge mushroom cloud. It seemed that these people didn't want to kill them, but were using the bombs to threaten the people inside. Yimo shot out 6 nails which went into the back of their heads or into their temples. The 6 men died quickly and silently. The outside of the Han Chan cave had a fan shape, so although it was easy to hold the position, it was also incredibly easy for the people from the outside to trap them. Yimo walked along the fan shape and killed his way through. Unfortunately, when he killed the 21st person, he was finally discovered by the last 3 people because the person Yimo had just killed was communicating with them, and his voice just suddenly dropped. From his cries for help, they immediately found Yimo. 3 gunshots resounded. Although Yimo's spirit sense had scanned their movement, and he dodged at the right time, there was still a blood slash on his arm. These people were much stronger than the 13 turbos, and the guns in their hands were also much more sophisticated than the trash used by the 13 turbos. He was actually injured. Enraged, Yimo shot out 6 nails at once. 2 people were killed straight away as 2 nails reached them, while the remaining 4 nails smashed to mesh the face of the man who hurt him. "Come over," Yimo called to Guichi. Of course, Guichi had realized by now that there definitely weren't just 16 or 17 people. 6 or 7 more people came. He said embarrassingly, "I apologize, elder brother Yi. It seems that I had the wrong information. Hurry up and meet up with your team." Yimo waved his hand and said. Chapter 56, Kai Wanqing. Chapter 56, Kai Wanqing. Captain, that bomb just exploded, but why nothing else followed after that, and what was that gunshot afterward? Did we get reinforcements? I don't know what's going on. I'll go outside and have a look. You guys stay here. Wanqing, are you alright? I'm fine, but leave me a grenade. The woman called Wanqing who spoke last had a pale face. The other 2 people knew what she had meant. Ammunitions were getting low, and if she couldn't defend herself anymore, she would commit suicide while taking as many lives with her as possible. Captain Lu, are you guys alright? Guichi started yelling as soon as he came in. It sounded like Brother Guo. Right, it is Brother Guo. Did we get reinforcements? Are the U-Devils finally finished? The youth with a machine gun in his hand asked, surprised. Fang Wei, you're right, it is Guichi. How did he get in? Wasn't he? No way. The woman who was they referred as Captain shook her head halfway. What's going on, Guichi? Captain Lu asked as soon as she saw Guichi coming to the entrance of the cave. Guichi saw the 3 people in the cave and was relieved as he noticed Kai Wanqing was still able to hold herself against the cave wall. I have requested for reinforcements, and we have already finished off all the U-Devils outside. Are you guys alright? We're fine, it's just that Wanqing was shot in the thigh. By the way, which squad saved us? Captain Lu looked at Guichi with suspicion, thinking, which team could come here this quickly? Even reinforcements couldn't get here so fast. Was it Wolf Howl's people? No, I met a friend in the forest just then. He saved me and helped me deal with the 20 or so you devils outside. Guichi caught on with his breath and said, What? You're saying one person killed more than 20 special ops? And this person is a friend you just met? Oh, Guichi, you do know how to kid. Captain Lu exclaimed immediately. Kai Wanqing and Fang Wei also looked at Guichi with suspicion. If they didn't deeply understand Guichi as a person, they would even think that Guichi had betrayed them. Guichi hurriedly said, Captain Lu, this is real. However, that friend ambushed them. He didn't fight them head-on, but he killed them off one by one in the shadows. I followed behind him and saw very clearly. He was only discovered by the last few, and they opened fire. Fang Wei then came to the realization and said, I heard those you devils open fire at the end, so that's what it was. Even if he ambushed them, this ability is definitely absurdly strong. Let's go, Guichi, show me this friend of yours. Wanqing, I'll help carry you, Captain Lu said to the woman behind her who was injured and didn't care if she would agree or not, she just carried her on her back. Wanqing has a gunshot wound, but my friend can cure it in a matter of minute. Look, I was shot here this morning, and now it has a scab already. It has only been a few hours. He really is amazing. Fortunately, I had the chance to meet him when I was running away, but you wouldn't even believe what he was doing at that time. Guichi spoke those words quickly. That's amazing, it really did form a scab. Fang Wei had been so amazed by the wound at Guichi's waist that he couldn't help but exclaimed. After a while, he remembered about Guichi's last part and asked, By the way, Guichi, what was he doing when you met him? Guichi smiled and said, He was leisurely roasting a rabbit in the middle of nowhere. He even gave me half of it after casually taking care of 3 men in a flash and healing my wound. He is definitely the strongest senpai I have met before. There are actually people this strong. I have to make him become my master, but he must be quite old. Sigh, if only Liu Chen and Yunnan were still here. Fan Wei's eyes became glum. Hearing Fang Wei talk about Liu Chen and Yunnan, these few people all fell into silence, and suddenly, the atmosphere grew heavy. Ah, what? A pile. After walking out of the cave, those few people immediately saw the 24 people Yimo killed stacked into a pile, but Yimo wasn't here. He actually killed that many. He is way 2F** king amazing. I must bow down to him as my master. Fan Wei exclaimed once again. Don't bother trying. Brother Yi is a powerful person out of this world. Do you really think he's going to take you in? Brother Yi. Brother Yi. After finishing, Guichi called out. You all came out. Then you can leave. I still have some things to do, so I won't be staying anymore. Yimo suddenly appeared from somewhere and smiled plainly. Guichi was stunned for a moment and immediately said, Elder Brother Yi, you're leaving? Oh, let me introduce. This is the captain of the Eagle Hunter, Luo Lin. The woman on her back is called Kai Wanqing, and this is Fang Wei. He really admires you. Captain, this is the Yimo I told you of that helped us. Yimo, hello, my name is Lu Lin. I'm really grateful for you this time. I never expected you to be this young. I thought you would be at least 30 or 40. Luo Lin hurried to extend a hand and shake with Yimo. The gratitude in her eyes was evident. Big Brother Yi, you really are so strong and so young. My name is Fang Wei. Would you take me as your disciple? Fang Wei's eyes shot out intense beams as he looked at Yimo with admiration. Yimo waved his hand and said, I only got them through ambushes. I'm only half learned myself. How can I take disciples? Don't bring up this anymore. Kai Wanqing looked at Yimo, and her eyes brightened up. The reason she wanted to join the army and even got into the Eagle Hunter squad through her hard work was because of her admiration for the strength of soldiers. Furthermore, her grandpa was a soldier, and her father was a soldier. However, her father didn't have a son and only had her as a daughter. She even had an argument with her father over some things and didn't want to stay home, so she used Hua Mulan, 1, as her idol and joined the military. If Yimo was really as powerful as Guichi had said, then he was a partner that she could approve. Usually, she had been very cold to people. Firstly, it was because she was too beautiful, so if she wasn't cold in the army, then there would be too many flies flying around her. Secondly, she felt that there was not a single person that deserved her admiration in the army. Although her instructors were unyielding, they couldn't finish off more than 20 enemies all by themselves, even with an ambush tactic. Of course, her cold personality was mainly due to family reasons and her upbringing. The only one she slightly admired was Shu She. He came to her squad to teach them for a few days, and he really was strong. However, he left a few days after. Yi Mo, who was in front of her eyes, seemed a bit different from Shu She, and yet, she didn't know exactly how. It was just a vague feeling. Elder brother Yi, this is my squad member Kai Wanqing. She is wounded in the leg, could you perhaps treat it for her? Guo Qi looked desperately at Yi Mo. Yi Mo looked at the woman on Lu Lin's back. She was just a bit over 20, her hair was very short, and her face was beautiful and picturesque like a drawing. However, she was a little pale, probably due to the loss of blood. Yi Mo shook his head and thought that this type of girl should be staying at home. Why would she come to the country border forest to fight? Note 1. Hua Mulan was a female general in ancient China who fought for her country disguised as a man. Disney made a movie out of her story. Another famous woman was Joan of Arc, or Jeanne d'Arc in French, who kept her hair short and men's soldiers' clothing through her military campaigns. Chapter 57, Treatment. Chapter 57, Treatment. Put her down, I'll have a look. Yi Mo had already noticed the gunshot wound in Kai Wanqing's leg. However, Lu Lin carried Kai Wanqing some distance away and put her down in an obscure brush before saying, "Please, Mr. Yi, while we deal with the bodies, could you help treat Wanqing? There are some spoils of war that we need to collect." She didn't wait for Yi Mo's answer and left. Yi Mo nodded. This Captain Lu did things fast and was very straightforward. She didn't even ask how he was going to treat her or even if he could treat her, and she didn't have the intention of asking Kai Wanqing either. Lu Lin left. Kai Wanqing looked down at the position of the wound on her leg and then looked at Yi Mo. She felt a bit awkward. After all, this posture wasn't the best. She believed Guo Qi's words. Since he said this Yi Mo could cure her, then he definitely could. However, the wound was on her thigh, and she hoped that he didn't plan on taking off her pants. Yi Mo looked at Kai Wanqing's wound and frowned. It wasn't that he couldn't cure her, but this position was a bit awkward. What if he put his hands there and this woman started rambling? He really hated doing things that were arduous yet possibly punishing, and seeing this woman's cold complexion, she really might start protesting. As she noticed that Yi Mo was looking at her wound and frowned without talking, Kai Wanqing immediately understood what was going on, and immediately, her impression of Yi Mo improved. She used a voice that was so low that even she could barely hear. "Yi. Big brother Yi, you can treat me, it's okay." Yi Mo was stunned for a moment and didn't know how to reply. He didn't think that she would take the initiative to ask him to treat her. He started to have a better impression of Kai Wanqing, who seemed cold on the outside but wasn't that indifferent on the inside. The reason he felt it was troublesome was that Kai Wanqing's wound was strapped tight by her camo suit, unlike Guo Qi, who was wearing ragged clothes. He only needed a palm to force out the bullet. However, Kai Wanqing's wound was strapped very tight by her camo suit. Now that Kai Wanqing said she didn't mind and asked him to treat her, he immediately had a good feeling towards her and thought that she was a very genuine girl. Thinking about this, he also smiled. "In fact, your wound isn't something troublesome. However, there are only two ways. First, you take off your pants, and I'll help you treat it. The other way would be to poke a hole in your pants." "Look, no need, I'll take it off. I didn't bring another pair," Kai Wanqing said, and took off her clothes in her own accord. Since she had agreed, she wouldn't be hesitant. Yi Mo's good impression towards this straightforward girl rose once again. Seeing her difficulty in moving, he hurried over and said, "Let me." "Thank you." From the first time Kai Wanqing set eyes on Yi Mo, she had felt that he was a pretty good person. Besides, when she saw his hesitation at the position of her wound and how his eyes never left that spot, she felt more trust toward Yi Mo and actually let him take off her pants. Although Yi Mo's hand didn't touch her skin directly, she could still feel the warmth of his hands, feeling a heartfelt comfort. Yi Mo didn't take her pants off completely and just took it down to her wound and strapped it up. However, Kai Wanqing felt this way to be more intimate, and her face immediately became flushed. As she didn't dare to look at Yimo's movements again, she turned her head, deep in thought. Kai Wanqing's youthful white skin struck a chord with Yimo. Her underwear seemed to be white checkered, however, Yimo didn't dare to look and focused his mind on the task. At the same time, Yimo palmed on Kai Wanqing's thigh, and a bullet flew out in a small spurt of blood. Afterward, Yimo took out a few herbs and chewed it a few times before applying it to her wound. With the help of his Kai, the medicinal power was quickly digested into the wound. Finally, he took out the dressing from his bag and strapped it to Kai Wanqing's wound, and pulled up her pants. The whole process took barely a few minutes. The reason he chewed the herbs instead of letting her doing it was that he was afraid that she would be too slow, and since girls needed some face, it wasn't good if she had her pants off for too long. Kai Wanqing only realized that he was done when Yimo pulled up her pants. She didn't even see the entire process. "Brother Yi, have you finished treating me already?" Kai Wanqing's blush hadn't retreated and was a little dazed. It's done. You will probably be completely fine tomorrow morning." Yimo smiled and said a few words. He used his Kai to help her heal her wound, so she should recuperate faster than Guiqi. It really doesn't hurt. There's also a feeling of coolness. "Thank you, Brother Yi, you really are amazing." For the first time, Kai Wanqing felt that there was such a thing as magic in the world, and her previous awkwardness had long disappeared. Which doctor could do what Yimo did just then? Taking out a bullet in a few minutes and treating a gunshot wound so easily. "Thank you, Brother Yi." Kai Wanqing also felt Yimo wasn't a normal person, just like Guiqi had said. "Brother Yi, do you mind if I ask you what you do for a living?" This was actually the first time Kai Wanqing asked about a man and felt her face burning up, but she desperately wanted to know. She also knew that it was fate to be able to meet someone like Yimo. Not everyone could meet someone with such ability. Yimo opened his mouth but swallowed the words "let's go." Kai Wanqing asked him something like that meant that she didn't have the intentions of leaving right now, so he could only casually say, "I don't have a stable job now, they're all temporary. As for what I do, if I'm lucky, I can earn quite a lot, but when I'm not. I had been kicked out by the city management once." Hey. Yimo wasn't lying. He helped treat people, sell at roadside stalls, sell charms, and even help people deal with gangs. Kai Wanqing looked at Yimo in disbelief. She couldn't believe that someone like Yimo didn't have a job and was even doing casual jobs. "Brother Yi, thank you for saving my life." Kai Wanqing couldn't even finish before she was interrupted by Yimo. Yimo smiled as he interrupted her. "Even if I didn't help with your wound, you would have been fine." "I didn't save your life." Kai Wanqing smiled sweetly, which stunned Yimi as he stared at her. He didn't think that the cold-looking Kai Wanqing could have such an attractive smile. Seeing that Yimo seemed to be entranced while looking at her, Kai Wanqing actually felt joyful and hurriedly said, "Brother Yi, I'm not talking about this. If you didn't come, the rest of the squad and I wouldn't even be able to live and perhaps would have been our *ped. I'm really grateful to you." Yimo nodded as he knew that Kai Wanqing was speaking the truth. He contemplated for a while and responded, "Actually, I feel that a girl like you aren't suitable for the army, but of course, this is just my view." Unexpectedly, Kai Wanqing nodded and said, "Brother Yi, you're right. Originally, I admired the military lifestyle, so I have worked very hard myself until I finally entered the Eagle Hunter squad. However, judging from now, perhaps I'm really not suited to live in the military." After thinking for a while, Kai Wanqing continued once again, "Brother Yi, I want to request your help for something." Chapter 58, Found the Place. Chapter 58, Found the Place. Yimo smiled and said, "Tell me, as long as it's convenient and not troublesome, I'm willing to help you." He felt good toward Kai Wanqing, so if he could help her, he wouldn't mind spending some of his time for her. "I have a cousin that opened a company in the Jiangnan province at the city of Luokang, but she doesn't have enough people right now. Would you have the time to go work at her company? It's actually really simple, you just need to survey the factory, and that's about it," Kai Wanqing said, beaming with joy. She suddenly realized that she had smiled more in these 20 or 30 minutes than she did for an entire year. Yimo immediately understood that this little girl was trying to help him out, but was scared that his dignity wouldn't allow him to accept, so she told it, masking it as a favor from him. Otherwise, how could there be such good thing? He didn't need to do anything and would just receive money. That would be too good to be true. This was a very meticulous girl, however, she didn't understand him well enough and was afraid of hurting his self-esteem. He smiled slightly as he gave her an answer. Thank you, Kai Wanqing. If I want to look for a job, I will definitely go to your cousin's company. To be honest, I really don't know how to do anything anyway. Yi Mo couldn't just reject Kai Wanqing's goodwill so straightforwardly. Even if he had wanted to work at her cousin's factory, he couldn't do so around this time. He still needed to grow his silver heart grass. Until it was fully ripe, he would not leave. You don't need to do anything. As she said that, Kai Wanqing realized that her words were too obvious and quickly added, you just need to walk around in the factory. Wait, brother Yi, I'll give you my number. You should save it in your phone just in case. Kai Wanqing was prepared to give her number to Yi Mo, who simply replied, sorry, I don't have a phone. Kai Wanqing was stunned. Who didn't have a phone these days? But looking at Yi Mo's appearance and the fact that he didn't have a job, perhaps he couldn't afford one. Seeing Kai Wanqing's troubled look, Yi Mo smiled and said, you just need to tell me once, and I will be able to remember. Kai Wanqing looked at Yi Mo with an air showing that she didn't really believe Yi Mo's words. Even if he remembered now, he would still forget later. She thought Yi Mo was just embarrassed to reject her, however, this didn't trouble her and immediately thought of a way. She took out an exquisite hairbrush from her pocket and used a small knife to carve out some numbers on it before giving it to Yi Mo. Finally, she was relieved. Yi Mo took her brush that still had a faint aroma and looked at it. He smiled and said, this number is really unique. Thank you, Kai Wanqing. If there is a time when I need a job, I will call this number for sure. Kai Wanqing seemed very delighted to see that Yi Mo accepted it, and immediately, she said, brother Yi, could you not call me that way? It sounds weird to me. Just call me Wanqing from now on, or my dad calls me Xiao Qing. You could call me that way too. Okay, Wanqing, Yi Mo said helplessly. He just heard her teammates call her Kai Wanqing. As she heard Yi Mo calling her Wanqing, Kai Wanqing seemed jubilant. She completely forgot about going back and instead continued her questioning. Brother Yi, I heard from Guiqi that you were trying to find something around here. Did you find it? Yi Mo shook his head and said, not yet, but it should be nearby. There should be 2 evergreen trees and a valley. I think the valley might be this place, but I haven't seen any evergreen yet. Evergreen? I know. When we hid inside the valley, I saw a place with 2 evergreens. It isn't too far from here. Brother Yi, I'll take you there. Kai Wanqing suddenly felt pleased that she was able to help Yi Mo. Before Yi Mo could say anything, Lu Lin's voice resounded not far from where they were, and Kai Wanqing replied to her, Sister Lin, I have some business with Brother Yi, I'll be back soon. Her voice sounded crisp and touching. Lu Lin was astonished. Since when did Kai Wanqing have such a cheerful spirit? Her tone was full of joy. Wasn't she always really cold? Did they? Lu Lin shook her head and turned away. She couldn't understand Kai Wanqing's change no matter what. Kai Wanqing also stood up a bit shakily, but Yi Mo caught her and said, I'll carry you. Yi Mo didn't have any ulterior motives, he just wanted to reach that place faster and see what that llama left behind. If he really could find large amounts of purple heart vine, it would be crucial to him. Millimeter, thank you, Brother Yi. Kai Wanqing laid on Yi Mo's back without any protest. For her, since he had already seen her without her pants, carrying her wasn't such a big deal. She wasn't a shy girl, and Yi Mo highly approved of Kai Wanqing for that. He didn't know if all soldiers were so frank. There were 2 twirls of softness on his back, and although it was very comfortable, Yi Mo didn't think about doing anything else at all. Captain Lu, did Brother Yi carry Kai Wanqing on her back? Did I see wrong? Fang Wei stared at Yi Mo and Kai Wanqing with his eyes wide open. He rubbed his eyes. Kai Wanqing, who always didn't like talking to male squad members and was even constantly cold, actually let a man who she saw for the first time carry her on his back. This was too absurd. You didn't see wrong, now hurry up and pack up these guns. They must have some business and will be back soon, Lu Lin said coldly. Guiqi also saw Yi Mo and Kai Wanqing disappear and nodded, Brother Yi is a heroic man, although Wanqing is cold to people, perhaps it's because she hadn't met the right one for her yet, and who knows, it might be Brother Yi. They are a very good match. Brother Yi, do you think I'm too unreserved? Kai Wanqing, who laid on Yi Mo's back, suddenly said. Yi Mo almost stumbled and immediately said, "No, I really like your unrestrained personality. You are very frank about everything." Kai Wanqing hesitated. Brother Yi, I'm usually really cold when I'm with my teammates. I don't really like to talk, and it's even possible that I didn't speak as much in a month with them than what I have said to you since we met. Ever since my parents divorced, I joined the army under my family's influence, and due to my father, I have a natural sense of rejection toward men. I don't know why, but, Brother Yi, I feel a sense of nature and freedom on you. Those are things I have always longed, therefore, it might be why I didn't have the feeling of rejection toward you. I'm not usually so unrestrained as you might have imagined, so, after finishing her sentence, Kai Wanqing looked worriedly at Yi Mo, afraid that Yi Mo wouldn't like her personality. Yi Mo smiled as he had understood what Kai Wanqing meant. She could sense the feeling of nature and freedom on him. This could only mean that she had a spiritual root, making Yi Mo look at her through another lens. On this earth scarce of spirit Kai, a place where cultivation resources were close to none, it was indeed hard to have a spiritual root. Live according to your own will, there's no need to compromise yourself for others. If you like them, you like them, if you don't, you don't. It's here. There really are two evergreens here. Yi Mo had just seen the two evergreens while talking to Kai Wanqing. Note: 1. The spiritual root is the determining factor on whether you can cultivate and how fast you can cultivate. It allows the person to be naturally connected to the spirit Kai in the world. Chapter 59. Tibetan Characters. Chapter 59. Tibetan Characters. Right, it is here. Kai Wanqing was also happy. It was as though she helped Yi Mo do something remarkable. Yi Mo put Kai Wanqing down and walked in between the two evergreen trees, and indeed, he found a lump on the ground. He found a wooden stick and carefully picked open the soil. There were a dead person's bones surrounded by a few rocks, and beside him was a plastic bag that was covered very tightly. However, many places in the plastic bag were starting to corrode. Yi Mo slowly picked the plastic bag with the stick and looked beside the bones, but found nothing else. The Lama must have placed this plastic bag in his clothes around the chest, and after the body had started to corrode, it fell off. Therefore, Fang Nan couldn't see it at the time. He slowly picked open the plastic bag and inside was a map made out of the skin of a goat that was also starting to rot. However, this goatskin map seemed to have been specially made. Although it was rotting, the content on it could still be read clearly. Yi Mo stared carefully at the goatskin map for a while, and what looked like to be a desert appeared to have been drawn on it. There were even some characters that Yi Mo didn't recognize. Just when Yi Mo was troubled over the map of the desert and those strange characters, a faint aroma traveled into his nose, and a few strands of hair fell on his neck, making him a bit itchy. Yi Mo immediately realized that Kai Wanqing was looking at this map from behind him. Yi Mo moved aside and said with a troubled face, "I don't know these characters, and now I can't even move the map, or it would probably shatter into pieces." Because Yi Mo moved aside, Kai Wanqing immediately realized her intimate position. She was a bit awkward when she heard Yi Mo's words and hurriedly say, "Brother Yi, I know these characters. They're Tibetan characters. My grandfather stayed in Tibet for a long time before he taught me these words." "Wanqing, do you really understand these words? Hurry and tell me." Yi Mo was planning on to remember these words completely, but now that Kai Wanqing knew, he was immediately delighted. "The characters on there are incomplete, but I can read a few: Ku Lake, Taklamakan, Luo Bu, and Holy Door. However, I think that Taklamakan is probably referring to the biggest desert in our country, the Taklamakan Desert. This desert is also called the Sea of Death, and it is situated in southern Xinjiang in the Tarim Basin. This map should be pointing there, and the route really looks like to be leading to the Tarim Basin." Kai Wanqing interpreted all the characters on the map. However, due to the fractured nature of the map, the interpretation wasn't complete. However, she added in her own understanding. After hearing her words, Yi Mo mumbled to himself, "So that's where it lead. Looking at the direction on the map, it really does guide to that place. Got it, thank you Wanqing. Kai Wanqing smiled sweetly and said, actually, I'm really happy that I could help you do some things. You don't need to thank me, I didn't really thank you before as well. Oh, that's true. Yimo laughed and put the map and plastic back into the ditch and buried the bones again. When Yimo carried Kai Wanqing back again, Guiqi and the others had already organized the battle loots. Kai Wanqing suddenly felt that the eyes with which her teammates looked at her were a bit different. She wanted to explain things but didn't know how to explain. Yimo put Kai Wanqing down and said, I need to go, let's separate here. Brother Yi, you are leaving? Hearing that Yimo was leaving them, Kai Wanqing suddenly felt a bit disappointed. Lu Lin looked at Kai Wanqing and suddenly said to Yimo, Yimo, once you leave, I will need to carry Wanqing, but when I can't, she will need Fang Wei and Guiqi to carry her. What's that got to do with me? Yimo just trailed off, feeling Kai Wanqing's imploring look. He remembered how she had helped him this time, and how without her, even if he could remember the characters, he wouldn't know where to find someone who can translate for him. He didn't have much to do now, so he might as well go with them for a bit longer. Thinking about this, Yimo said, fine, in that case, I'll go with you guys for a bit longer. Wanqing, come on, let's move. Master, you call her in such an intimate way. Fang Wei walked over cheekily and said. Yimo swiped his hand and said, stop, I never told you that I was going to take you in as my disciple. Hearing that Yimo was willing to go with her a bit longer, Kai Wanqing rejoiced and hummed in approval before immediately laying on Yimo's back without any hesitation. Sigh, Wanqing, at least be a bit more reserved. Look at you, you just got on straight away, what can I say about you? Lu Lin looked at her with a shaming glare. Yimo quickly said, Captain Lu, don't say random things, there's nothing between us. I only just knew her just like you guys. Kai Wanqing was blushing and didn't dare to talk. She asked herself what she was doing just then. However, Yimo was the first person of the opposite sex other than her father that gave her a good feeling. She had been in the military for 3 years, so what sort of elites haven't she seen? Yet, never had anyone been able to leave her any impression, but today, this Yimo, who she saw for the first time, was able to leave an impression in her heart. Although she was very cold to people, she wasn't a reserved person due to her family influence. She wasn't good at masquerading her emotions, or maybe she simply didn't want to, so if she felt good about someone, then she did, and if she didn't, she didn't. If she didn't have this personality, she wouldn't have had a big argument with her family and left for the military herself. Therefore, she was very happy that Yimo stayed. If Sister Lin didn't make him stop, she would have found a way to do so herself. When she was in university, her grandmother told her, do not miss the opportunity only to regret it in the future. Yimo's eyes were clear and didn't have those obscure intentions that she didn't like. The main thing was that Yimo saved her, and he seemed to be really strong. For Kai Wanqing, Yimo was a pearl hidden amongst the grass. Since she discovered him, there was no reason to reject the idea of pursuit. Although he seemed really desolate now, one day, he would soar high into the sky. Of course, this wasn't the main reason that she had a good feeling toward Yimo. It was mainly that Yimo had something on him that she longed for, this serenity, freedom and this unexplainable spiritual cleanliness. She liked that feeling on him. It was something that couldn't be expressed with words. Knowing Kai Wanqing's cold personality, Guiqi didn't joke around with her even after Lu Lin said it. Guiqi was very respectful towards Yimo. In his eyes, Yimo was truly a man with great ability who kept a low profile. The forest between the borders of China and Yu was massive. Other than Captain Lu, who only carried Yimo's bag and felt that it was light, Guiqi and Fang Wei were all carrying tens of guns and the bone ashes of the 2 other squad members and were slightly struggling. They only walked for an hour or so before it was dusk and decided to camp for one night before leaving. Because Lu Lin and the others were ambushed, they had lost a lot of things while escaping, so now, only Yimo had a tent in his bag. This tent could only be given to Lu Lin and Kai Wanqing. Yimo and the other 2 could only sleep outside. However, Guiqi and Fang Nan were obviously experienced in outdoor survival. Soon, they cleared out a big patch of space and even set up a wooden tent. Chapter 60, Green-Eyed Small Snake. Chapter 60, Green-Eyed Small Snake. Elder Brother Yi, the tent is a bit shabby, but it's ready. At night Xiong Fang and I will be responsible for night duties. How about you go in and have a rest first? Guo Qi came out and said. Yi Mo smiled and said, no need, you can leave the night guard duty to me. I like it outside at night. By the way, Brother Guo, you're older than me, so just call me Yi Mo from now on. Yi Mo felt that Guo Qi was a good person and valued team spirit, which made him want to be friends with him. He didn't like those heartless people. Okay, then I won't be too polite to you. However, you don't need to call me Brother Guo as well. The people in the army call me Da Qi, you can also call me that too. It's my honor to know you as a friend, no, I mean brother. What do you think, Brother Yi? Guo Qi was a frank person and didn't hesitate. Yi Mo nodded and said, this is great. Thinking that Yi Mo was roasting rabbits in the forest leisurely, Guo Qi didn't insist. After all these days, he indeed was tired and went to rest with Fang Wei. Inside the tent, Lu Lin looked at the contemplative Kai Wanqing and asked, Wanqing, what do you think of this Yi Mo? Kai Wanqing, who was still immersed in her own thought, was caught off guard. But after her surprised exclamation, she quickly caught on and remained silent for a while before saying, I think Brother Yi is a good person, he's really powerful and has some kind of. Kai Wanqing repeated that for a long time but still didn't finish articulating the words, some kind of feeling I long for. Wanqing, you've come to the military for about 3 years and, of course, I know why you came, but when women get older they need to find some place to belong to, yet you've never shown a good face to any men in the military. 3 years ago, you were trying to avoid your father trying to marry you, or perhaps it was due to your mother, however, it has been 3 years already. Are you really prepared to be like this for your entire life? Sometimes, when fortune comes, you must not reject it, Lu Lin sighed. After a few moments, she continued, that year, I just finished high school and was 19 years old, at the prime of my youth. I just started work at the State Literacy Department where I met him. He was a handsome man. Not just me, but the other girls in our department liked him. However, he was really nice to me. He asked me out multiple times and, half a year later, he even proposed to me. At that time, I was just 19 years old, and I didn't know what to do when a 27-year-old man proposed to me. Although I liked him very much, I could only tell him I was still so young and asked him to wait. Half a year later, on my 20th birthday, he proposed to me once again. I still wanted to wait because I really felt I was still young and didn't dare to form a family. However, from that day on, I never saw him again. He had left. I waited for another year but still haven't heard any news of him. At that time, I thought, as long as he appeared, I was willing to marry him immediately. However, he never appeared again, and I no longer had the will of working there again, so I came to the military. Wanqing, sometimes, there is only one chance. If you lose it, there will be no more. There's no wrong in trusting me. I've seen all sorts of people in the military. Yi Mo doesn't seem like a sly person. His eyes aren't dodgy, he's just a little poor. With your family wealth, would you really care if he was wealthy or poor? Besides, there is the adage of not looking down on a youth who is poor. I think that if you really liked wealthy families, you wouldn't have rejected your family's will that time and came to the military. Lu Lin sighed contemplatively as if remembering what happened those years ago. Sister Lin, my feelings toward Brother Yi aren't what you say it is. My feelings are, sigh, I don't know how to explain it. I'll go check on Brother Yi. After saying that, Kai Wanqing was preparing to walk out of the tent. Wanqing, you can walk on your leg now? Lu Lin pointed at Kai Wanqing's leg and said in surprise. Yes, actually after Brother Yi treated me, it wasn't long before I could walk. It was just that it would hurt after some time. Speaking up to here, Kai Wanqing seemed to have thought of something and didn't dare to continue speaking as she rushed outside. She suddenly felt a burning sensation on her face as though she had been caught out. Seeing Kai Wanqing running out of the tent, Lu Lin seemed to be lost in thought. Wanqing looked like herself all those years ago, but Yi Mo didn't seem like the man she met at all. At this moment, Yi Mo was sitting on a rock not far away, contemplating. He was using his spirit sense to make out the map he saw today. Yi Mo had thought of the lines on the map countless times. Gathered with the words Kai Wanqing helped him interpret today, it was indeed the Taklamakan Desert. Although he hadn't been there yet, he had analyzed the map of China closely and roughly knew the main regions. However, he really had no idea where the Ku Lake was, and even what that holy door was supposed to be. He knew clearly about the purple heart vine. It was a spirit wood that was used in many of the pills used during the Kai gathering state. Although it didn't have strict growth conditions, it would definitely not grow in the desert because the most important condition for the growth of these types of spirit wood was water. The Taklamakan Desert was the biggest desert in China, and its average yearly precipitation was less than 100 millimeters. During the worst years, there were barely a few millimeters of water. Although Yi Mo was deep in thought, he knew immediately when Kai Wanqing came out. He smiled and thought that even though the girl looked cold, she seemed to be growing on him. Just when Kai Wanqing didn't know how to speak to Yi Mo, she saw him turning around, smiling at her, which relieved her as she quickly walked up to him. However, when Kai Wanqing walked behind Yi Mo, her face suddenly changed. A grey snake with a pair of eyes that flashed green lights was actually charging toward Yi Mo from behind him. Not good. Kai Wanqing heard that triangular-headed snakes were poisonous. However, this snake was not only triangular-headed but a sharp triangular. Without even thinking, Kai Wanqing jumped toward Yi Mo's back. The moment the green-eyed, triangular-headed snake attacked, Yi Mo felt it. If Kai Wanqing didn't charge over, he had a way to avoid it, but now if he wanted to drag Kai Wanqing out of the way too, that would be impossible. The green-eyed snake almost arrived at the same time as Kai Wanqing. She was just behind Yi Mo, while this green-eyed snake came from a few meters away, yet they would arrive at the same time. From this, it could be seen how fast this snake was. The grey snake accurately bit Kai Wanqing's back, which shocked Yi Mo, but he wasn't too worried as he thought that he could cure a poisonous snake bite. He turned and carried Kai Wanqing in his arms. Yi Mo saw the green-eyed snake posed not far away, wanting to attack a second time and appeared to be targeting him this time. Anger surged up in Yi Mo as he raised his hand and 3 metal nails flew out. Slip, slip. Unfortunately, none of the nails managed to pierce the snake's head, 2 of them glided off from its skin, and only one managed to scratch out a bloody gash. The green-eyed snake seemed to recognize that this person wasn't easy to mess with and slithered away, disappearing almost immediately. Not good. This wasn't just a simple snake. Yi Mo realized it as Kai Wanqing's face had already become gray. Such intense poison. Yi Mo knew things were growing dire. At this moment, Lu Lin and Guiqi were already coming his way. Seeing the situation, they all knew that a venomous snake had bitten Kai Wanqing. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.